I wanted to start there.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started this evening. Sorry, we're running a little bit late. We had a facilities meeting going on before. Is there a motion to accept or modify the agenda this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to modify the agenda in the following ways. I would like to move our work session, item D, discussion and possible approval of Warren County Public Schools 2022-23 Crisis Management Plan to be an action item. And I would also like to add a new work session item, which would be a personnel update.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this change? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, is there a motion?
Yes, I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on this evening, we have a presentation, and that's going to be given to us by the Virginia School Board Association President, Mr. Martin, and President-elect, Mr. Woodard, and I think they're joining us via Zoom.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm Teddy Martin. I'm the president of the Virginia School Board Association, and I'm a school board member from Henry County. I understand that you all have some questions, and I and my president-elect, David Woodard of Tazewell County, are here to assist with those to the maximum extent that we can. The one thing that I ran on when I first ran for my local school board seat, and some people could get on me, my expression was I was willing to talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. I think you could tell I ran in my 20s when I had that expression, but I still fully intend to honor that to the degree that I can. So again, I'm grateful for the opportunity you all are giving us to try to answer your questions, because that's my belief and reason I ran for the presidency of the Virginia School Board Association. I wanted to help each of the local boards and do all that I can for all of the students of Virginia. So I'm grateful to be here with you this evening, and I'll let Mr. Woodard get his own introduction in, and then we'll get going.
Thanks, Teddy. I'm David Woodard. I'm president-elect of Virginia School Board Association. I'm a board member from Tazewell County, which is down in the southwest corner of the state. Apples to apples, except for the LCI, we look a lot like Warren County does down here. So I'm happy to answer the questions we can answer, and hopefully provide some clarity and move forward, see what we can do.
All right. So what I will say is I know that we got a series of questions presented to us ahead of time, and I don't know for the sake of going through one by one, but we'll go through and try to answer. I know it's going to be a lot of information, so forgive me if I feel like I'm going too fast or anything of that nature. But the first question I saw was, how does the Vsba determine its legislative priorities? And it also kind of ties into some of the other questions about how our officers are elected and so forth. Vsba is divided into regions. And those regions roughly range from a little more than a dozen to up to 18 to 20 school districts together. They are not exact, but they often mirror some of the superintendent, Department of Ed regions, etc. The localities in those regions each get one vote per locality. It's irrespective of student size or anything of that nature. It's not population based. It's strictly each school board gets one vote. Typically, the boards will nominate their chairman as their voting delegate and their vice chairman as their alternate delegate. But we largely have those in the delegate assembly in November in Williamsburg with the annual convention, where every locality can show up, vote, etc. The priorities piece of that, though, we have meetings, and David has previously been our legislative position chair, so he could expound on this if he'd like. Localities, each of the school boards, are allowed to submit proposals for positions that they would like the Vsba or the state board to advocate for. Those positions are then submitted to a position committee with a representative from each of the regions. They get together and make recommendations of, do we want to, or is this consistent with previously established handbook? Is this a new position, etc.? This is a change. The committee makes a recommendation. It goes before the state board of directors, which again includes those regional chairs, as well as a couple at-large members, a couple committee chairs, the past president, and the president-elect. So those are generally the entire state board right there. So each of those are generally elected by the regions, with each one having one vote per locality. Trust me, I don't think you'd have a president from Tazewell or a president from Henry County if we weren't doing each locality gets one vote. You have exactly as much say as Fairfax, Richmond, anybody. You have the exact same amount of say. So that's the process there. Those recommendations come before. The delegate assembly gets a package of, and by the way, they can split them out and vote on them one by one. That often happens. All it takes is one county to come up there and go, I'd like to pull that out and like to vote on it separately. And then we'll do roll call votes of, where are each of the localities feeling on this matter. The majority wins. The general concept that, yeah, go ahead.
It's worth pointing out here too that we, when you look at Virginia electorally, that delegate assembly is represented. Each county has one representative in it, and there are a lot more rural counties, or you might say red counties, in this state than urban, and that heavily sways the positions typically to us rural folks' likings more. But did y'all receive? We asked for the legislative positions handbook to be mailed again to each one of your board members. Did y'all receive that before tonight?
We do have it.
We got it tonight, as we said.
Yeah.
It should be small and blue, I think. I think they're blue this year.
Yes,
Or white.
yes, they received them. We handed them out tonight.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure y'all did have that.
So admittedly, not a lot of time to review, but it is very thick. It has policies dating back many years, detailing when they were voted on by the delegate assembly. The general main concepts, which align pretty well for me, are that we do not believe in anybody usurping local control of public education. The value of this is predicated on the local boards in consultation with their constituents, their parents, their students, etc., and their staff and teachers, are the best have the best understanding of the needs of that community. One size fits all does not work very well. I don't care if that's coming from Washington, Richmond. I don't care if it's me. What's best in Henry might not necessarily be best in Warren, might not be best in Fairfax, and so forth. So ultimately, that's kind of the key concept that is behind a lot of the positions that the board takes.
And in 1906, when Vsba was founded, it was formed on that one policy of supporting local control. And that is still the number one policy. Number two is unfunded mandates from the state legislature.
So I'll even use as an example what caused me to run in the first place. And some of you are probably going to roll your eyes. You've already heard the story. David will gladly do so. Is I went to my little sister's elementary school recital, And it was at the local high school, so it's our biggest school, etc. There were trash cans in the hallways collecting rainwater, and they were not supporting with adequate funding to address this issue. They just treated it as it was a normal thing, the roofing weight, etc. I did not feel I could sit back while my siblings, who I'm, big brother and a guardian to, would just go through that. I didn't think it was appropriate for them. I didn't think it was appropriate, period. And that's what got me involved also in, our need for capital improvement. And that's a issue that we've worked on with the Youngkin administration so that we could get finally some work on school modernization and construction. So I'm grateful for that. That was the issue that motivated me in the first place. But, we've very much opposed some of those mandates, like David mentioned, previously in my time here, the Democrats proposed a mandatory collective bargaining. We opposed that, did not feel that was appropriate, and was a burden on, all it goes against that concept of local school board control. In many cases, we've opposed policies of an administration, Democratic or Republican, because of that single principle. And needless to say, we've not necessarily been the most popular with either. I can say for David and I, we both received letters essentially threatening potential legal action against us because we did not fully go with mandating the Vdoe transgender policy. The code stipulated that a policy must be established consistent with. It did not say it had to be their policy. So, we got the state superintendent, the department of the former, not the current one, the former. I'm giving. This is what we were dealing with a year ago or more. I'll just say the Youngkin's administration was quite happy back then with me. But that was the situation there, is that we take these stands for the local school boards. They may or may not prevail. And then, based on the policy services, we have to, in order for the legal compliance piece, we have to meet what the code is, even if that's not something that we supported occurring. So it's kind of a difference of, the policy services side and the lobbying advocacy side of this. Now, I will say, and these are the quick answers. There was a question about is Vsba subject to Foia? The Foia Council ruled in 2000 that Vsba is not. They have that opinion available on the website. We can provide that. As far as disclosure statements, yes, lobbyists are all made their disclosures. Those are available with the Ethics Council, publicly accessible there. Happy to help with that. Trying to think what other pieces, and I know that the last component was more what we opposed, but I want to emphasize that we worked both with Democrats and Republicans in a bipartisan way on that school construction and those funds that did come in the most recent budget, and that budget is the most comprehensive, fully funded towards education that we've seen, ever. So, we're quite happy with that. But there are, let me see what other situations, and I'm talking a lot, so David, feel free to.
There were questions, there was a question on how is the VSBA board made up. I think it was. Members of the VSBA board of directors are elected by two ways. One, each region elects a chair of their region, and that chair is automatically on the board while they're chair. And then the others, there are two at-large members, and there are some appointed members that chair committees, and president, president-elect, and immediate past president. And all of those are elected by the delegates at the delegate assembly that Teddy was talking about earlier. There was a question about who does VSBA represent, and VSBA represents its members, which is each Virginia school board that is a member. And currently all school boards in the Commonwealth are a member of VSBA and have been for at least 20 years or so, which maybe 25 years, as far back as anyone there can remember. School boards are elected or appointed to represent their students and their teachers and their communities, all the members of their communities. So that was one, or maybe a couple. Question about the policy for sexually explicit books in school libraries. And the policy team is working on a policy to comply with that code section right now. I don't know which update it would come out in. But those policies that are drafted, they meet the letter of the law, which is the important thing that protects you. But school boards are not mandated to accept them just as they're written. You can amend them, you can decide not to accept them, that's up to each school. Teddy talked about the transgender policy in Tazewell County. We did not adopt that policy. We took it out of the pack, and we felt, and our legal counsel felt, that the policy we had presently met the letter of the law there. There was a question about customized policy drafting, but we did not do customized policy drafting. I can't find the question right off. Did you talk about federal lobbying?
I had not, but one thing, of course, and since you are the former legislative positions chair, I'll let you speak to that. But part of the legislative position chair is also a federal relations committee. And one thing I'll also emphasize, and this is definitely a me and David thing among others, we certainly responded because there was also pieces here on parental rights, etc. We withdrew from the National School Board Association for many reasons, but one of which was, some of their partisan and some of their not supportive parental rights type positions. So we do take that very seriously. But we're separate from that, literally, figuratively, every which way you could. But David, since you've been the committee chair there, feel free to continue.
We took some heat from some of the urban areas for withdrawing from NSBA, but we had many board meetings about it, and we felt it was an important enough issue, not just their stances on parental rights, but the way the organization was run and whether they were fiscally solvent. And we joined, I think, 29 other school boards associations, or 28 other.
It's 28 or 29 other are out at this time. There are still several others there's still several others that have currently active processes going for that, because some of them have to change their bylaws and etc.
And those are mixed between northern, southern, western. California's out, Illinois is out, Vermont or New Hampshire, I can't remember which is out. Most of the southern states are out, and we have formed an organization called Vsba, and Teddy will gladly tell you what that stands for. Whole lot of letters in there.
I'll just go ahead and say it's the Consortium of State School Boards Associations.
He said that so well. So we have taken an active role in the leadership of forming that organization and making sure that it does not delve into the political scene, and that it advocates for what's best for students to succeed. Where were we? Federal Relations Committee, or network, goes by two names. It's comprised of a school board member in each congressional district in Virginia, and that group, that committee, for the past few years has done so by Zoom, and may continue to, but goes to Washington, D.C. to meet with all of our Virginia federal legislators to talk about education and to talk about the topics that are important in their home districts that they're there to represent. That really, other than being a member of Vsba, for example, is our extent in federal lobbying. It's our only hands-on should we take?
And one thing I want to emphasize as far as the infamous NSBA letter that I did make a reference to, one of the reasons that we are much happier with the organization that we are with now, and David, I, and others took the position we did, the National School Board Association did not clear that letter, and this is their own investigative report. They didn't clear that letter with the president of the Virginia School Board Association at the time or the other presidents. They just did it.
Or their own board.
Yeah, they didn't clear it with their own board either. They just up and did it and said they were speaking for all Virginia, all the school boards, Virginia, elsewhere, etc. And I have a problem with that. I'm not a believer, like I said, with the whole I don't take one-size-fits-all solutions. Our goal is to, and the motto is leadership, advocacy, and support. It is not tell you what to do. It is not anything of that sort. We're here to help you. We're not here to, after all, we're mostly about fighting mandates and trying to support local school divisions, especially ones like mine, which is also rural and not funded as well as I would say I advocate for with my local appropriating body. But, the goal here is to try to provide the best education we can for our students. It's not for us to dictate no more than, those people we're fighting trying to dictate to you anyway.
I've been looking here, a question about an oppositional stance of a veterans bill. Do you remember it, Teddy?
Yes. Well, what we heard was that we did not take, the Vsba did not take a official position on that issue. That's what we've got. Yeah,
to protect students inside our schools, Vsba did not take a position on that. And the primary reason is that there's nothing at that time, but maybe now, that time there was nothing in the legislative decisions handbook to give guidance to that.
I will also say that sometimes the lobbying efforts aren't necessarily to support or oppose a bill as much as it is to, here is an issue with the bill, can we work to, make this better and resolve some of these concerns. It's not...
What happened this session with the lab school bill that Senator Pillion from Washington County proposed, and we worked with him, our lobbyists worked with him to answer some concerns on our side and more some concerns from the other education lobby out there. And that bill passed and ended up being a good bill that Vsba could support.
And let's see what else is out there. Anything else you can think of off the top of your head, David? Because I know we're kind of running through the whole...
Yeah, and I don't want to take too much of their time.
I know, they're being very gracious.
I don't even know if they can hear us, really.
I don't know, see? But look, I'm seeing thumbs up, all kinds of stuff. So full disclosure on a couple of things. One, David and I are both known to basically be stand-up comedians. I've actually done it. And then the other item, which it's kind of been alluded to, and it's a little interesting. A lot of my presidency, aside from advocating for capital improvement across Virginia school divisions and the increased budget and etc., it's been interesting and striving to serve all of our very diverse state. Because we have quite a few other districts who look at us and think we're far too conservative and we're from rural divisions and we don't understand their urban divisions and we don't understand the big cities and etc. So as David was mentioning, the comparisons of Tazewell and Warren or me and Henry and Warren and what are the commonalities, what are the differences. I always strive to serve all of our boards, and to the point earlier of, who do we represent? Well, we represent the boards. It is very much our boards represent everyone. So our goal is to try to help the boards do, what we can to support them to achieve their missions. So if we're doing it right, we should be helping everybody. at least to the extent we can.
There was a document. There were several questions that surrounded the idea of the value that Warren County sees or can see out of a VSBA membership. And I'm going to be as honest as I can. I'm not smart enough to work Google Meet. And I don't know how to put that up. But Tim, if I email that document to you, is there a way to put that in their hands? Are you there, Tim?
Yes,
Tim,
I'm here. Yes, yeah, we could take care of it.
I'm going to try to do that. I did not think far enough ahead to figure this out. I'm sorry about that.
We were joking about both of our day jobs being very involved. And in fact, I'm, literally coming from one meeting to the next, so.
I came from Meet the Teacher.
See?
And now, this is going to be a little worse, rougher than I thought.
So you have it on your computer?
Now, I've got it on my iPhone.
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't know how to get it to my computer. Is there a share button, and is the screen big enough that they could see it?
It might be. There is a button like right beside where the hand is. There's a square box with a arrow pointing up. If you can do it from there, or if you've got it, on your computer, press that and then share your screen that way.
I do see.
Or you can just email it to me and I can pull it up.
Let's see if this works. Man, that's about, there it is. All right, now. I can come back to find you all. Now you're gone. There you are. A window. That window. Share. Do you see it?
We do.
Do I need to make it bigger?
Let me see what I can do on this end. Yeah, that's good. You guys can see that a little bit better.
Teddy, can you see that?
Yes.
Do you want to run through it, or you want me to do it, or you want to take turns?
I would go with take turns, especially since you're the one with the bottle of water and I have nothing on deck.
Well, that's cheap shot. Membership in your school board association provides a host of benefits, provides access to a range of services that help school board administrators effectively, efficiently govern at a local level. So basically, going down the list is state government expertise, federal governance expertise, meetings, conferences, webinars, professional development training, professional legal consultation, access to cost-saving insurance services through VACOR, access to VSBA policy services, board docs at a substantial discount, affordable superintendent search services. There was a question also about how many of those there are. I have no idea. At one time it was about 10 or 12 a year, but I don't know now.
I think that that's still accurate, if not a little increased, because unfortunately, and as you all are certainly aware, just the amount of turnover exhibited by superintendents over the pandemic and coming there out. But my understanding is those numbers are about right, but a little elevated with how many searches due to all that turnover.
Legislative advocacy, federal advocacy, newsletter, the daily education news, podcasts on relevant topics, statewide media relations, statewide award and recognition programs, friend support groups, which are pretty big. I'll give you examples. If you end up being sued by a group or individual and it goes to court, then you can ask for VSBA's legal department to write an amicus brief or amicus brief, I've heard it pronounced both ways, basically kind of the court brief to support your side. And quality publications that we put out. And the point of this chart is to show that while there are other organizations out there, none of them provide all of these services with membership.
I'll add also that there are times that we have supported, certainly not to the extent of how expensive litigation is, but we've supported with, you know, fees, donations, etc., from the Legal Defense Fund.
All right, you're up, Teddy.
Well, I mean, for one, I just have to say you did a fantastic job running through that. But you know, as the document mentions, you know, we're one of the oldest, largest continuous state school board associations in the nation. We are actively involved in the new national organization. We have a very experienced staff. Our executive director, Gina Patterson's been there. David and I joke about, you know, it seems like she's been saying 25 years for a few years now. Mm-hmm. But, you know, she's been there through quite a variety of things and quite a variety of roles.
And what I've seen, and I'm gonna just speak up. Sometimes she gets some cheap shots at her. What I've seen is, since being on the executive committee of this organization, are the executive directors of other state school board associations all over the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the southern border to Canada, who daily are contacting Gina for her advice and her guidance through issues that they may be going through in their states. She's very well respected outside of the Commonwealth. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I agree completely, because, for example, you know, where we're establishing the Vsba organization, I see that directly because she and I are, you know, working on the board of that new organization in each state, sort of like ours. Each state gets a representative. And she's very influential and respected within the organization. And I mean, their first conference, which is in Atlanta next month, is sold out. And I mean, a lot of that and a lot of the establishment of that has been her and her work and helping us keep Virginia a very active and very meaningful part of that organization and you know, advocacy generally. But you know, I'm very happy with the staff that we have and the hard work they do, and it's amazing to me how much they accomplish. You know, for 130 plus districts with a staff the size that we have. I will pick and say that while the newsletter is great, just, you know, to pay little mind to the fact that it starts off with a letter from me every time, and then you can find probably better information as you scroll down. But you know, I personally will say, you know, the value I've seen in the Vsba membership, and it's the reason I got involved, was, you know, what I've always seen is when you have a unity of purpose, sort of like, you know, there wasn't a lot going for school construction, and you know, there's schools that are 100 years plus old in my district. But once I was able to get with other school board members and get with our legislators and state officials, and I will just say this, when I call over to Richmond or I go to have meetings with these delegates or administration officials, etc., they're not as interested, at least in my case, I'm just telling you from Teddy, they're not as interested that Teddy Martin's here from Henry County. They're more interested that Teddy Martin, president of the VSBA, is here, and they're that way because we have the Warren counties, because we have all of us together. That's the reason that they listen to, this is what we need for our rural school divisions. This is what we need for, etc. Because we don't necessarily have the size of, say, a Fairfax where we can show up and say we're the biggest that there is. We can say, but all of us together have this and can say this and have this influence. As pointed out, with each of our localities having one vote, collectively, we represent a substantial portion of the state and have a lot of influence together. So to me, that unity is what means a lot, and that's frankly, I've spent a lot of time convincing the urban divisions that we're not completely rural and conservative, this, that, and the other, and I'm trying to convince. Again, it's all of us together. We have common purpose and common goals. And we establish those through the delegate assembly. So that's my perspective there. David, do you want to scroll down, or are we about, how much we got left here?
Oh, you got 3 pages to go, honey.
I got 3 pages to go? Okay.
When to stop?
Well, I mean, they're going through a lot of the points that you made earlier, but, like, for example, the legal defense. The Capitol Conference is great for, having those meetings with your local delegation legislators. And as we've also emphasized, actually all of these are not, there's nothing mandatory from us. Everything is optional. Everything is, what you want to make of it. What you feel is valuable to you. That's not going to be the same in every locality. What you feel that we can help you with. And there's plenty that we'd love to do as well. And
there are a lot of things that you can go through and see in the legislative positions handbook that Teddy and I can go through in rural counties and pick out that we don't particularly love. But it's our option to come as a school board and propose to change that position, going through the legislative position committee and then the delegate assembly in November. So it's very hard to get a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's why everything comes back to those 2 things, the local control and opposition to unfunded mandates.
Let's see, what else do we have? Keep on scrolling, David. Of course, we mentioned the annual convention. That's probably the biggest event we have by far. And as David likes to mention, we are the largest organization of elected officials in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So, I also felt like, especially when I was a newer board member, that I learned a lot from, say, the school law conference and, what changes had been made, via the General Assembly sessions. We've got the superintendent search, which there's quite a few. One thing that I'm working on in Henry County is an establishment of an educational foundation, because we are, in Henry, the 2nd lowest funded school division by the locality. So, I'm actively working and trying to find ways to get increased financing for our school divisions, whether that be, the support of the administration and General Assembly for increases in the budget, whether that be ways to fundraise and look for innovative approaches. Just to make sure that our folks, our students, our families have the best opportunities, and that they're not just based on what zip code you live in. And then, this is kind of referencing, there's a lot of group partnerships that, because of the size of our organization, because of the number of school divisions participating, you're able to get discounts of various services that would not be available except for the fact that we're an organization representing all of Virginia school boards.
Let me ask, if you all don't mind, do you all participate in the BPA insurance program? I can't see if there's a...
No.
Have you looked at it?
No.
it's worth a look. And I say that because we have saved a ton of money in Tazewell County. And it seems like every year we're getting back 300,000 or so in rebates from pharmaceutical rebates. We're saving 250 to 500 depending on the year that we bid it out. Overall cost on our end of the insurance. It's not a bad program, and it's worked out very well for us. But that's one of those partnerships that Teddy was talking about, that and Vapor. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah.
Or try to.
You succeeded.
Did I? Because I don't see y'all. I do now. There we are.
There we are.
Is everybody still there, or did they leave while I had my screen up?
From the camera.
I wouldn't be shocked if I didn't bore them.
Yeah, so the camera's right
Hey guys, I'm Kristen Pence. I'm the chair of our school board here. Hey, I want to thank you all for coming. I also just wanted to make sure, I know you've referred to a list of questions that we sent ahead of time. It was a really long list, like 39 questions. I'm looking at it here. You guys have that available to you this evening. I think you've answered some of them, but I know for our specific locality, a couple of things, you know, that have been really brought into question with VSBA membership and what your stances are is really kind of what the political leanings are in some of the trainings that some of our members have participated in, what VSBA is doing to advocate for parental rights across the Commonwealth, and really just sort of how the trainings themselves are being run in a nonpartisan way to really just get the facts out to our county school board members. So if you could speak to that a little bit. I don't know if you have these questions.
I think that, and I tried to answer every question that I felt like I adequately could. The leanings of the trainings, I don't think that there is an intentional slant on the part of VSBA in any training that is put forward. Sometimes there may be more bills presented by one side or the other that are opposed, but again, those come back to that legislative positions handbook, and that is literally what the lobbyist uses to support or object to bills. So it's I've heard people fuss that the different presenters would lean one way or the other for more than a time or two, and you really can't, unless you give them a script, you don't really know what they're going to say. I don't think there's any intentional thing, and you're referring to that heavily edited and cut up video that was out, and you know, a lot of that is Stacy's style of humor. So I'm sorry for anybody that offended. I was not there, so I don't know everything else that was said, but I know she talked more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, I was there. She said a whole lot worse. So you had said earlier about veterans, and that was one of the, you said that the VSBA did not take a position against that, but at that lobbying conference, she took a position against that, and her quote, it's very direct. I think she shared it as, oh, thankfully that bill's already dead, and that's the only good news I'm going to share with you today. So what do you do when you have a lobbyist who just goes rogue? I'm assuming that's what happened, is she just went rogue and decided to present her own ideas as those of the VSBA?
I will say that, you know, I was there and presided over the conference, and I did receive some complaints on some of those, and there were some things that certainly I, as a former Republican Party official, recognized could be problematic, especially for members from more rural conservative districts. I did discuss with her, I did discuss with Gina, and admittedly, I haven't seen or heard similar, at least to that extent. To David's point, you know, I'm not standing up there and, you know, going exactly, because I mean, even our last meeting, you know, our representatives from the administration were given about 15 minutes to talk, and they went about almost 40. I didn't feel it was my place to go up there and come off. But, you know, I did address that with her and with them. And then we also had, I remember at that conference, I believe a representative that was affiliated with the Nsba, and we, you know, had some comments there that I addressed. So, you know, that as an example. You know, one criticism that I've gotten during my presidency, aside from me having been a former Republican Party official, is that many of our speakers have actually been Republicans, mostly because they're the ones who've responded to our invitations. For example, we had a legislative advocacy event back in January, Coffees and Conversations, that all of the representatives that attended were Republicans. Now, we invited Democrats as well. And I definitely got criticism from some of our more Democratic county about that, but that was how that played out.
Okay, I know we promised not to keep you guys here too late tonight. If you had any last minute closing things, otherwise we appreciate your time coming in to talk with us. I think we need to move on kind of to our board discussion about where to go from here.
Could I ask the other question?
One more.
That we're going to.
One more thing, but does somebody else have one more thing too?
Yes.
Well, I have several, but I know you guys are trying to wrap up here. But some of the big ones were when I had asked in some of these questions, is the Vsba subject to Foia?
Well, I answered that one, and the answer is no. The FOIA Council ruled in 2000 that it is not. The opinion is on their website.
So then you also don't have to disclose the money coming in and the money going out?
It is a nonprofit organization that has various filings, but you know, it's not a 501c3. But you know, admittedly, that's more different officials than myself.
Do you know? Because I can't find any of your information reporting online or on your website. Do you know where you could direct me to find that?
Admittedly, I didn't hear all of that, but I mean, we're happy to, you know, do what we can.
What can you direct me where to find your those filings that would be public?
To my knowledge, you know, admittedly, I still can't hear all of that.
Where to find the filings, and they would be with the IRS, but I don't know where at their website.
The Kinsey doesn't come up.
I'm scanning my notes to see if it might be in here, but I don't think that it is. The lobbyist stuff is with the Ethics Council, though.
Yeah, the lobbyist disclosures are all with the Ethics Council. Those are all public.
Let me say this before we wrap it up. That we value Warren County. We value every member of the SBA. We realize that there are a lot of times that there cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach and answer that makes everybody happy all of the time. We don't lean one direction or the other unless we were to lean rural. And it is quite literally, if you look at a map of Virginia, a whole lot more rural than it is urban. So, you know, if there are legislative positions that need to be changed, that's not all that hard to do once you get in the delegate assembly when 60 60 or 65%, I can't remember the exact numbers, Teddy, are rural counties. So
I think it's about 65.
we know you all have paid your dues for this year. If you decide you don't want to be part of us, we're not trying to put anybody in quarter or make you stay. We want you to stay, but we'll be happy to send that check back.
Yeah. We're not about, forcing anybody to do anything.
But if you stay, we're here to serve you.
Yeah.
How can we get more information? I know you guys are out of time today, but a lot of these questions are questions that I've had for quite some time, and I can't seem to get feedback. I've got parents that are asking these questions. They're sending in emails. They're not getting feedback. How do we get these questions addressed? Because I also wanted to address all the affiliate program that you have with you and how you screen them and where the money comes in. I have a lot of questions that still have not been addressed. How, outside of this meeting and having these types of votes, how do I get your attention to get an answer?
Well, I mean, I got a request for a meeting, and I came, and I'm here, and I'm trying to answer every question I can, and I don't believe in ducking, so I'm going to do everything I can to answer. I'm more than happy to spend the time and effort to try to get everything I can for you.
So we can ask more questions?
I mean, maybe we could just ask that we get a written response from the questions that we have. That way we don't have to keep them this evening, and then we can, yes, move on. Because we've kept them for a while, and we have a long agenda. All right, thank you guys for joining us this evening. We'll be back in touch and maybe try to get some written responses to some of our questions, share it out to our members, and just continue our discussion, okay?
Thank you.
So much.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Okay, so moving on this evening to our action agenda. I know we have some people here ready to speak, so for our first action item is going to be approval to renew Virginia School Boards Association membership for 22-23. Is there anyone that would like to speak this evening?
We have a list.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
List first.
I've got Walter May.
I wrote down, I thought it was just your sign-in sheet.
Oh, okay. So I believe this is Steve Heiss.
Yeah. I can see that. All right, it's been proven that Vsba is partisan and it pushes democratic policies. Ward County does not need to be provided legal services that will be slanted towards providing advice to further the democratic agenda. Who cares how much it costs? Why should we believe the advice given? I would rather spend more money from a law group that we can trust than receive faulty advice. And remember that your vote will be taken into account next election. Now, I'd also like to address the propaganda that we heard here from two people. I'm quite sure that these two guys are probably the most conservative guys that they could bring on board. And if you look at what happened before Youngkin was elected, you had a lot of partisan things going on with the Vsba. And they were talking to all their people about going down to make sure that Youngkin doesn't get elected, because if he does, the sky's going to fall, because he's going to ruin the agenda, their agenda. And so they try to marshal all the school boards people that they could. Well, yes, now the sky is falling for them, because they're going to lose money. This is all about money for them. If you look at what they were trying to do, they were trying to get a Youngkin not elected and their guys elected. But instead, they got creamed. So now they don't have power. And in this election, they're probably going to lose more. The next election, they're going to lose more power. So now what they're doing is they're like a turtle. They're going to stick their head in the sand, try to say, no, we're great here. No, we're going to be working for you, because they're going to lose their money. This is all about money for them. So vote no.
We've got Bruce White.
Sorry, there's a list. I'm sorry, I called people.
I thought it was supposed to be on approval for it. Is this both pros and cons, or?
Yeah, if you want to speak, speak.
Oh, it's just whoever wants to.
Okay,
It's the public
thanks.
comment section.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Bruce White. I have been a resident of Warren County since 2005 when I retired from several years of teaching special education in another state. I moved to Virginia to be nearer my kids and grandkids. But I can tell you from my experience that the state school board associations offer very valuable services to the local school boards and to their educators. I think you would be very hard pressed, especially given the fact that the Warren County school budget has not been fully funded at this point. I think you would be very, very hard pressed to get the same benefits that are offered by Vsba from any other source for anywhere near the membership fee that you're paying. So I would encourage you to continue your membership with Vsba. Thank you very much.
Next is Mark Edgar.
Good evening. If you all remember, I'm the king of Yoruba land, and my pronouns are Your Majesty and His Royal Highness. I am not in favor of renewing membership in the Vsba or their policy services agreement. I was looking through their agreement here. They charge $3,000 for the agreement. That's after you've already paid $9,000 and some pennies for membership. They don't really do much for this. They take, I guess the General Assembly is composed of geniuses because you all are too stupid to read the English in the code and do what it says you have to do. So you have to get the Vsba and pay them $3,000 to tell you what the General Assembly did. I guess it's rocket science, I'm not sure. But you all can read and write and speak English, so just read, if there's a new law in the code, read what it says to do, and then if you think you should do it, and if you don't think you should do it, which I don't think you should have done the one that Governor Blackface forced through 2 years ago, where we have to pretend that a boy is a girl and a girl's a boy, anti-science, anti-biology. You're supposed to be a school system, and you're teaching stuff that's not true. It's not science. A boy can't be a girl, and a girl can't be a boy. We just heard from one of these gentlemen, his county ignored their own Vsba services agreement that they said that you all adopted, that everyone has to pretend that a boy's a girl and a girl's a boy. So I think tonight you all should rescind that policy you passed last summer, because he just said you don't have to do it. And we even heard, I've even looked it up, the Department of Education is not policing which counties pass that and which don't. So there's no penalty, regardless of what the state assembly says, there's no penalty if you don't pass that ridiculous anti-science, anti-biology law. So go back, re-look at it, what you passed last summer. Do not go with the Vsba. It's $3,000, and their liability, if you get sued, is limited to $3,000. Well, that will cover one attorney for half a day, okay? So, and there will be lawsuits coming from that ridiculous anti-science policy that you passed last year. You can bet there's going to be First Amendment lawsuits, violation of freedom of speech. You are bullying teachers to call people by the wrong pronouns, and students are being bullied. Freedom of religion, everyone is afraid to say anything in your schools. They've turned into a freak show, and the freaks are running it. Wake up. If we don't get this right, we're not going to get anything right. Get this right. Boys are boys, girls are girls.
You say nothing?
Janet Brown?
She's working her way up.
Madam Chairman, members of the school board, fellow citizens, my name is Janet Brome. I live in the South River District of Warren County. I came here this evening to speak to the issue of your membership in the Virginia School Board Association. This organization is not a lobbying organization for liberal causes. If it were, why would it have pulled out of its membership in the National School Board Association in regard to their support of comments made by President Biden that had to do with limiting parental rights? They felt they were limiting parental rights. If they were a left-wing lobbying organization, why would every school board in Virginia be a member? If the organization lobbies, and it does so apolitically on behalf of public schools for educational programs that we believe in because their opinions are based on our input. They provide many services to school boards beyond giving legal advice, such as training for new board members, an annual convention, superintendent, well, you saw the list. One law practice, if we were to go with your suggested alternative of hiring a lawyer, could never provide the wide range of services that the Vsba does. Hiring a lawyer as an alternative to membership in the Vsba will cost taxpayers much more than the membership would, although I haven't heard a figure. I assume you might have one tonight. Please, let's be fiscally responsible and spend our money to improve education, not to satisfy a right-wing agenda. Thank you.
Mike Maybe? Mayor?
Express hand raising.
Mayor?
Hope everybody in the back can hear me.
I thought that we were not permitted to wear any kind of political or...
You are interrupting my time, young lady. Good evening, board, lowly commoners of Warren County, and any jerk-feds tasked with monitoring this meeting.
You said no kind of...
In America, they call it lobbying. Everywhere else, throughout the annals of time, they've called it bribery and corruption. The Vsba, by the way, thank you for those used car salesmen coming to convince us. I will not take my hat off, sir. The Vsba is a lobbying organization who also happens to offer certain services to school boards statewide, none of which cannot be provided by an organization that is not involved in lobbying issues that go against what I would consider Warren County values. Right is right even if no one is doing it. Wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it. Just because the Vsba has 100% statewide participation does not mean it deserves ours. Their monopoly on setting policy for counties in Virginia can only be broken up by people with the common sense and moral courage required to say, no thank you, we can figure this out without your guidance. The Warren County School Board has shown itself over time to lack either common sense or moral courage, perhaps both. Case in point, the reversal on the garbage transgender policy last year because certain folks feared personal or professional blowback for following the will of their constituents. This is a golden opportunity to set this board on its redemption arc and represent Warren County values moving forward. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm hopeful that you'll all show me something with your vote here tonight. We do not need the Vsba. The Vsba needs us. Thank you very much, as always, for the opportunity to speak my mind this evening. God bless America. God bless Warren County. And anyone that doesn't like my hat, I'm sorry.
Oh, there's no, you're not. You didn't take it off.
Sebastian Clement?
Take your hat off, dude.
All right, let's not communicate with each other anymore.
Well, rules don't apply to everyone?
Nope.
Let's stop the lobbying bullshit and take the hats off.
There are children in the room.
Well,
Flash your
oh, yeah.
Well, there are children in here, they're at the podium.
Whoa, after me, close it after me. I'm getting scared. Good evening, I'm Sebastian from Shenandoah Farms in Warren County. First, I'd like to say that this message doesn't go for all members of this board, but some of them should pay attention. We all know it's been happening for years now, and we the people of Warren County want no parts of the cool little intro they said over there today. My son goes to LFK, and here's what it says on the website, and I quote, "The mission of Warren County Public Schools is to provide a quality educational opportunity for every student to achieve their highest academic learning potential, develop positive core value reflective of our community." Our community does not want to be involved with Virginia School Board Association and their push for CRT, transgender agenda, and all the other trash you're trying to push on us. You can't just wish to be something God did not create you to be. No one here, well, hopefully no one here in this county wants their high school daughter in the same locker room as James, who now goes by Julie, yet still has male hardware swinging around for innocent girls to see. And I've heard about this plenty of times happening, not only in Virginia, but all across school boards, colleges, whatnot. We're not going to go into detail, but may I remind you, all y'all, that you've been elected by Warren County residents, and y'all are here to represent us, meet our demands. We've got more muscle than the Vsba, and we shouldn't let them push us around and making immoral decisions. If you can't represent us the way we want, then we'll have to deal with you accordingly. And what I mean by that is by election time, y'all are replaceable just like anybody else. I know last year's board voted against transgender policies, and I see new faces this year, and I encourage y'all to listen to the vast majority of your constituents. I won't hesitate to pull my son from your school system, send him to Dominion Ridge Academy, or homeschool him myself. And, you know, we're all counting on you. And I wonder if some of the people that support y'all's renewal of the school board even have kids in this county. Thank y'all. God bless y'all, and have a good night.
Nancy Smith.
I've never witnessed what I just did. I thought rules are rules, and the lack of respect. I want to thank you for serving as a school board member. I can't imagine doing your job. I'm a mother of 3, grandmother of 6. I'm a retired school teacher of almost 30 years. I've taught in the New York City Public Schools. I've taught in Utica Community Schools, which is the 2nd largest district in the state of Michigan. And now we're retired and we live here, and my husband is also a retired school teacher. I thought the reporting by the VSBA was very helpful, especially the question and answer opportunity, the dual sheet that they presented. It was quite clear, you know, when you compare all that you receive by being a member to what others would provide, there's no comparison. And then in light of the funding, you don't even have the funding for the school year yet. And you're wanting to change to another association, which will cost more, or have our own legal, which is going to cost $40,000 to $50,000. I urge the board to vote yes, to continue to work with the VSBA. I mean, it says something that every county in Virginia uses them. What, is this a test ground, Front Royal, to get them off? Another thing, of all the school boards, administrations that I've worked with and that I have known, I have never known a school board member or school board members to use their role to promote their own personal political agenda. Never. It should be a non-partisan position. Again, it appears that this is just a test ground. Recent, the letter to the editor that went out this week. A school board member here wrote one in the Front Royal Examiner for her views, for her position. That was so, in my past experience, inappropriate, unacceptable, should never have happened. Again, I urge you to vote yes. That seems like the very clear decision to make. And I'm sorry for how you were treated. For someone to threaten you with their vote and the way they talked about students in this district. Just like now, I sat and listened to what you said.
And you asked him to
and what they said about students.
Thank you.
It's time.
Mr. Grant, next.
Steve Kurtz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to give my personal opinion about the Virginia School Board Association. I've done a little bit of research on them. They are definitely a political lobbyist group, and I don't think that our taxpayer dollars should be going to lobby for an organization. We only get one vote in. One vote. That's not particularly a good way to spend your money. Now, you know, if they didn't do the lobbying, and I looked at some of the things that they lobbied against, one was school choice. That was a big one for me. I think school choice, it scares a lot of people because then we have to be accountable. And when people get the choice of what school they get to go to, you know, it's a little scary for teachers and the system, you know, because then they actually, you know, have to compete for somebody's money, because that's what it comes down to. I do not believe, and I look back at some of the luncheons and all the other things they had. I didn't see any Republican speakers in any of their events. They had Terry McAuliffe, Ralph Northam. I didn't see any Republican speakers. That just tells me where this organization goes as far as lobbying. And it makes sense to me. If you're a lobbyist, of course you want to bring the people that are in charge in so that you can lobby to them. But taxpayer dollars to lobby for bills when we have our own representatives here elected from Warren County that we can go to if we have issues with bills and legislation. And that's why the votes are here in the county, not at the Virginia School Board Association. I think it's a way to kind of go around, you know, our senators, our delegates that handle our representation in this area, and I don't think it's a good way to spend our taxpayer dollars, my money. You know, if people want to personally, you know, give to the Vsba, and that's fine with me because that's how political organizations work. We're not, you know, they're not funded with taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Jane Elliott.
thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. First off, please do not renew membership in VSBA. Quite simply, our students need education, no more woke indoctrination. Way too much time, way too much taxpayer money is wasted on producing woke agenda-driven results that way too often conflict with parental rights, beliefs, and responsibilities. Parents send their children to schools to learn to think, to succeed in academics, and to prepare them for adult life. Parents expect teachers to support them, not, per the VSBA training, to mock them to their children, and worse yet, turn them against their parents. Enough of VSBA's lobbying for wokeism that undermines parental rights and negatively impacts children. Please keep Warren County Schools' decisions local, here. This is where they should be decided and made. Please vote no on funding VSBA. Thank you.
Elizabeth Poole.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Poole. I've lived in Front Royal for 23 years now, and I have some credentials in education. I'm firstly a product of public schools in Michigan, all the way from kindergarten in a small town through university, Michigan State. And I taught for a year in Michigan, and then I taught 2 years in the Army dependent schools in Germany. And after that, I was raising children. I have since acquired an advanced degree at a private institution. And I substituted in Fairfax County Schools when I lived there and so forth. But the whole focus, I'm really disturbed about what has happened to education in the United States. And I think it comes from the establishment of the Department of Education in the middle 60s by Jimmy Carter. And it appears that, to me, that the focus has more and more been on emotions rather than reason. The parents have a right to expect their children to be taught academics. That's what schools are supposed to be about. Not your feelings, not your emotions. Emotions come and go, as everyone knows. And I think that the local school board can handle these matters themselves without affiliation with this VSBA. And also without affiliation with the National Education Association. So I would urge you to disengage from, let's say disengage from VSBA. And so that's really what I wanted to tell you, to vote no about this.
We have one more. It's James Bergetta, but it's for B, for action item B. Would you like to hear it now, or do we want to wait?
Typically, we can do it now.
You do it now? Okay. James Bergetta? Bergetta. All right.
Shenandoah District. Thank you all very much. I looked over the policy service agreement and I have a concern, so if you choose to go forward with this, I would suggest that you talk to your attorneys about a few terms, because I think how it's currently written, I have some concerns about the language here. So in section 5, it states the VSBA's sample policies are copyright protected. And should the board choose at a future point, or a future board choose to leave that, it is required in section 10 that all policy manuals, updated policies, and or CDs are returned or destroyed. So how it's currently written, at least how I understand it, we could be in a situation where our policies go away should a future board choose to leave this agreement. So I would suggest that you negotiate with the VSBA should you go forward, but that you require an extended grace period to continue having use of those policies after ever leaving the agreement. So I would suggest 6 to 12 months. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all from the list?
That is all from the list.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Irma Powell. I'm from the Shenandoah Shores, well, I'm Warren County, but I live in Shenandoah Shores. And I'm hearing a lot of like emotion on either side, and my thought was that there's a lot of people that are saying that are for this are saying because of the financial issues. There are a lot of people that are against it seem to be for the moral issues that they feel that are coming up. You know what your financial situation is. You know what morality you're standing for. I just ask you to think about when you're discussing issues that come up, how often the specter of the VSBA is affecting that in your discussions. And if you feel that that is if it's affecting it too much, because they're saying, well, you don't have to do anything we say. You know, you can be in it, you can not be in it, you know, and we're just completely nonpartisan, except at one point the guy, Teddy, said, well, we were trying to convince Fairfax County that we weren't really that conservative, which kind of didn't make sense to me. But my point being that if you, in deciding what you want to do, to weigh both of them and how much either of those things, the financial is bearing too much on you or the moral is, you know, in that if you have a moral decision to make, are you thinking in the back of your mind, how is the money going to affect, you know, is VSBA going to give us that money if we make this moral decision? If that's starting to cloud your decision-making process about what you feel to do, what is right and wrong, then I don't think it would be a good idea for you to belong to the VSBA, because that's, I can't think of the word. On the other hand, if you have no problem deciding what you want to do morally, and it's no issue whatsoever, and VSBA can be darned, you know, if they don't like it, and we can still, you know, make use of the other services, then fine. But from what it sounds like, that they're a pretty, you know, large organization, and they seem to have a lot of influence on the group. So you have to decide what influence they have on you, and if it's not that much, and you can be free to make your moral decisions, then fine. Take advantage of their services. If you feel like that's encroaching on your ability to do that, and there's a lot of pushback from them, and you have to be concerned about what you're going to have to pay for doing that, what's right, then I would disassociate with them. And that's just my suggestion. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you again for your help and your work.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening. I'm John Cermak from Shenandoah Farms. And first of all, I'd like to apologize for making a loud noise. The fact that somebody else was disrespectful doesn't put me in a position where I can be disrespectful. I'd like to thank the council for their work. What I would like to say about this is it's unfortunate that we had such poor presenters, in my opinion. I was very disappointed that they didn't address the specific questions that were sent in, at least in a more organized fashion. So I think it would be very difficult for somebody like me to support something like the organization without a lot of investigation. I think the questions that I think you asked should be answered, and you should look at it is it an advantage to us or not? Not emotional, because you're a Republican, he's a, Jesus, or that I don't want my kids doing this and that. The point is it giving the teachers support that they need in the council and your committee? And I think that's what we ought to be looking at. And I didn't see it presented here clearly, in any way clearly. And I don't see the other opposition to it being clearly stated. So I think somebody needs to do some work, and thank you for your time, peace, and serenity, and I'll leave you.
thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Okay.
My name is Meredith Parnes. I live in Linden, Virginia, and I would urge you to keep your membership with this organization. Like the speaker before the gentleman, from what I heard, you can take their guidance or not. You can amend it or not. And the kind of benefits you get from training, superintendent searches. It sounds like that saves you guys a lot of things to have to think about individually all on your own when there's already so much on your plates. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for stepping up for elected office.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Okay, so Dr. Ballinger, that brings us to you with a little bit more information, I think, from comparisons that we received.
So I just provided that. You can see that document that's on board docs that I did provide information for you guys to look at and review what information we were able to receive. You know, we did have a short turnaround on things, so it's just, this is reaching out, making contact, and trying to get, as far as price quotes, the best as we could. And so that document, you can see, does start with board services. It does list the annual membership. It does list the legal assistance fee. Also on this document, this is from Virginia Code. It's the required trainings for board members. And then, of course, training services. We did talk to Sands Anderson. I talked to Timberlake and Smith, Real Synergy, and then I also put on there what the VSBA's are. Policy services, again, talked to Sands Anderson, which Sands Anderson is our attorney. Timberlake and Smith, they're another attorney that, another organization as far as attorneys that serve school divisions in Virginia. And then I put on there the VSBA policy services. And then board docs, we did have, I know Mr. Ballantyne talked to I guess it was a sales rep with board docs. So he reached out and they did get a sales rep to contact him back just to see what the non-member service for the services that we currently have through board docs, and so that price is listed there.
And I know we asked our attorney to be able to be here this evening as well, just to kind of get his input on what he would be telling us from his side of policy services. He's unfortunately not available, but just because not everyone has access to the sheet, his quote was the first year would be roughly $50,000 just to sort of go through, I assume, all of our policies, get them kind of
So I found out more about that. So actually, this makes a lot more sense now. And speaking with some of the other counties who have opted out of their policy services. So the issue is with their contract. So their contract, at no point in time do we actually own any of these policies. So this $3,000 a year allows us permission to use these policies for that year. So we're essentially renting them. And they've got all this copyright law written into this contract. So the issue is, if we were to break the contract with the Vsba, we have to start all over again. So why are all counties members? Well, because the Vsba holds policies hostage. So they can increase this fee. They can continually increase this fee on us, and whenever that time comes that we would decide to leave, we start from scratch with our policy, and we have to rewrite everything and tread lightly around their copyright law. So that's why there's such a huge upfront cost with that $50,000. Now, in looking into what some of the other counties have spent, the cost on an annual basis going forward is then typically quite small. the majority of the VSBA policy revisions, as we all know, when they've come into us, it's mostly language changes. Like this year, there were a lot of the pronoun changes, the big one being, and we just went along with the pronoun changes because I really don't care, but the big one that we had not gone along with was their taking the pluralization of parents off, if you remember. The VSBA suggested that we take off the S for parents and make everything parent. And so we said, no, we would like to leave that parentheses S option on there. Now, the other concerning part with this contract, in reading it, is because I heard the concerns that, well, the VSBA provides us with liability protection, essentially legal insurance, whereas if they write the policies and somebody sues us for one of those policies, they are going to provide us the legal protection. But if you actually read the contract, they don't. They provide us a maximum of $3,000 worth of coverage in liability. So that's all we get. We could adopt a policy like what the gentleman suggested tonight. If we end up getting sued over these bathroom and overnight hotel stays that are co-ed and not being told to parents and the locker room situation, if we end up getting sued over that, the VSBA covers the first $3,000 of us accepting their policy, and we eat the rest. Furthermore, any policy that we edit in any way, shape, or form, so for instance, us keeping parents plural instead of singular, it's off the table. We've already lost our liability coverage on that. So it's really not any protection from them at all whatsoever. Now, clearly with our current contract, we need to talk to our attorney and find out, because we need to have an exit strategy. We can't cut and run, because I never realized that they own us. They own our policies. So we have to, if we're going to explore leaving, we have to come up with an exit strategy. And then I think the other thing that's important for the public to understand is the expenses. Fiscal year 21 was over $35,000 is what we spent with the VSBA. In reading their policy book that we got tonight, just in the few minutes I did, I think it's also important to understand our demographic and who we were elected to represent. And a quarter of Warren County students opt not to attend public school. They are private schooled and they are homeschooled. And there are some glaringly obvious policy standards. This organization is actively lobbying against that 25% of Warren County students. In that, the Tim Tebow bill, that's the VSBA lobbying to get that Tim Tebow bill overturned every time it's passed. So when it's passed in the legislature of Virginia and then gone to the governor's desk, it's the VSBA that lobbied to make sure that got shot down. The other thing that the VSBA has a long history of dating back years and years is they hate homeschoolers. They can't stand us. And they actually have current policy, their stance, their current legislative position is to crack down and ask the state of Virginia to change the laws to restrict religious exemptions from schooling. And we see the number of religiously exempt homeschoolers in our county, and those are tax-paying citizens. So we are taking money from those religious families who have exemptions and giving it to an organization to spend that money to lobby to remove their religious rights. That's a big deal. And those are just the three things that I picked up in reading this book for all of 5 minutes during the presentation. Why did the VSBA pull out of the Nsba? That was a question that was asked. I'll tell you exactly why, because I helped lead that effort. Because we got enough school board members from across the state of Virginia to sign petitions and submit it to the VSBA to swear to them that if they didn't leave the Nsba, who was attacking and calling parents terrorists for addressing their school board, we told them we would do everything we could to get out of their organization if they didn't leave. So they did finally listen. I think it's important that we also recognize it's a 72% Republican county. So what he's saying in this presentation directly conflicted itself. their chief lobbyist, Stacey Haney, I have attended a lot of VSBA events. The majority of the expense has probably been from me for this last year because I wanted to learn everything that I could possibly learn. And it's really hard to learn and absorb material when you're being faced with a woman who is continuously mocking and laughing at you for your belief system. And yes, I did write the opinion piece in the Royal Examiner. I absolutely did, because I was falsely slandered and accused in another opinion piece of having some three-pronged plan to tear down the public school system, which couldn't be further from the truth. I see our exit from the VSBA as what is going to save our school system. This constant division in our community of tit for tat, side for side. We're going to lobby against homeschoolers. We're going to lobby against private schoolers. We're going to try and pit these children against each other at school. It is tearing our community apart. And the way that we start to heal that is we leave the divisive organization that is pitting us against each other. These are tax dollars funding this. These are not donations to campaigns that you can choose whether to be a part of or not be a part of. This is money taken from citizens without their choice or consent and used and weaponized against them. So I think that just about covers it, but all I would ask is that at the very least, I don't know how we ever ended up in a contract like this in the first place, but in my personal life, I would never sign something that literally ties my hands and gives up every right that I have.
So we did get a lot of new information tonight from the VSBA, from our attorney. Like these thick green books just showed up on our desks when we got in here this evening. So, I mean, I guess with all of that, is there, I feel like we haven't really had the opportunity to look through all of the information and really come up with a true exit strategy. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or different.
And Madam Chair, the board did request for the attorney, which he could not be here, and he did ask if he could meet at a later time.
Right.
So he is willing to meet, it's just that he is not available this week.
Right, and we understand.
And honestly, this is a big decision, and I don't think we should just rush into it. When I thought we had this deadline of the certain date, it was one thing, but as they presented tonight, we're still active. So I think we need to take our time on this and fully explore our other options. And I would like to make a motion to just go ahead and table it for discussion and further legal advice.
Can you do your motion to include A, B, and C, please?
Do what?
Yes, I can do that. I move that we table A, B, and C and follow up with additional information before we proceed on this matter.
Madam Chair, I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on that?
The only thing.
It's September 21st.
Okay.
So,
it's
so
not the
we'll
date
just
that I'm
add
gonna
that.
miss.
That's right.
Okay.
We're not going to bring this up at our September 7th meeting. It'll be at our September 21st work session.
So you're gone to 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, whatever the first thing is, yes.
As well. Yes.
You're gone too?
All right. All those in favor of tabling until our September 21st work session, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Great. Thank you. All right, next up is going to be approval of Grow Your Own Memorandum of Understanding between JMU and Laurel Ridge Community College and Warren County Public Schools. Mr. Goodwin.
Good evening. It's good to see each one of you tonight. If I could, I apologize, I left the folder here. Thank you, Walt. Give me all those. Sorry about that. Thank you. If I could, I'm going to give you a quick folder here to review as part of my agenda item. I'm going to make this quick. Everybody knows I'm a quick speaker. It's fine. Good evening again. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you tonight. We have a great opportunity before us to join hands, join work for a Grow Your Own program with JMU and Laurel Ridge. So tonight, one of the things I've given you a folder, I'll tell you what's in there in just a moment. But providing every student in our community with the very best teacher is our mission, every single day. And there aren't as many teachers for us to hire as there used to be. Every community is working on a Grow Your Own. It's a great opportunity for us. It's a great opportunity for our employees and also a great opportunity for our children. So one of the things that we have developed is a partnership that I hope you'll approve this evening with Laurel Ridge and JMU, that any currently employed paraprofessional can express interest and then work through a degree program at Laurel Ridge and JMU to become licensed teachers in special education, preschool, early childhood education, or elementary education. I did provide for you the original document the other night. And then today, after Laurel Ridge, I think, finished reviewing it with their attorneys and departments, there was some edits. So I have provided you in the blue folder in front of you tonight with the edited information. The good news is there's no edits for our agreement. So the school division will, at the bottom of that first page that you have in the blue folder, all of the agreements that we have asked for you to support have not been changed at all. So there's no change on our part. But I did feel that it was essential for me to let you know the changes in the document itself that I'm asking for you to allow Dr. Ballinger to sign on our behalf. So I hope you don't mind indulging me just for a moment and reminding you what those may be. We have, by the way, already identified a number of people for this program if you are to approve it tonight. We have asked for interest in our school division of current employees that are employed in a paraprofessional setting. 14 of those people are ready to begin at Laurel Ridge, should you accept this opportunity, and then 6 are prepared to begin at JMU. So I hope that we'll be able to work through this tonight and get your approval. Starting on the second page under Community College Will, you'll notice there that number 2 on the first document was removed. So they just removed one of the sections that was in that original document. Do you want me to walk through the original document and compare that language? Are y'all okay with that? This is the agreement for Laurel Ridge. Just want to make sure. Okay. Halfway down that page again, they reworded. It says inform students about the resources available. The original document mentioned that they would provide the resources, so they're going to inform the students of the resources. On page number 3, under student enrollment and status, they did add D, and you should have a yellow highlighted color copy so you can follow along easily, I hope. Under D, they added civil rights compliance, complaints about student conduct and student discipline will be addressed by the educational institution in which the student was enrolled. On that part, it would be either Laurel Ridge or it would be JMU. At the end of the page, they did add a reference to section 7E at the bottom of the page. And then finally, on the 4th page under miscellaneous, they just added a little bit of wording to the first section under amendment. The second bullet, modified by JMU, provided any revised versions are provided to the parties prior to implementation. In other words, if there's any changes made, then they would allow for someone to participate or not. Then they added 2 additional C and D, which was independent contractors. The relationship between the parties is that of independent contractors. Nothing contained herein shall be construed as constituting any other relationship between the parties. And then finally, each party shall be responsible for the acts and omissions of their respective officers, employees, and agents in connection with the performance of their obligations under the MOU. Page 5 remained exactly the same. They're asking for the signatures of James Madison University, Laurel Ridge Community College representative, and Warren County Public Schools. And in this case tonight, I'm asking for your permission for Dr. Ballinger to sign this document. And then finally, the largest number of really edits are on the form itself. This actually form is for students who enroll, our paraprofessionals. So they actually removed the Social Security number requirement on this page because it was not essential for people to be enrolled. They didn't need that information. Of course, that's private information. So they did switch that over to the college identification number. And then they added the school division's name as one of the boxes. And finally, at the end, for students to agree that I understand if I do not earn a C or better, that I'll have to retake the course and pay for it myself, And if I want to continue in the JMU Grow Your Own program, I also understand that admission to JMU is not guaranteed. They have to meet the requirements. So basically this program would allow our paraprofessionals to enter either Laurel Ridge, depending on where you are in your educational journey, or James Madison University as a pathway to licensure. And all of the money that is expended will be reimbursed to Laurel Ridge from JMU, who is the carrier for the grant funding. And then these employees have to commit to spending at least 2 years in the division where they currently work as a payback. That's how they pay back the loan. So there's no cost to the employee if they remain employed with us, or we hire them in a teacher position.
And I do apologize, this was an action item, so if anybody from the audience would like to use 3 minutes to speak, please come up now. Is there a...
I just think it's wonderful because there is a teacher shortage crisis in our nation, in our state, and so there needs to be some ways and programs that we can get more people on board in the profession. So I know in the state of Michigan, the governor has, she has a Michigan Future Educator Scholarship to cover $10,000 for 2,500 future educators every year, 9,600 stipends for student teachers, Troops to Teachers, which connects veterans with mentor teachers as they work to become certified educators, and then like you just said, grow your own programs to put Michiganders on a no-cost path to becoming an educator. And I can tell you the morale of teachers is at an all-time low. And I know for a fact in this county, it's very alarming, troubling. It sickens me. When I got into education, graduated in 1980, I was so excited. I wanted to be a teacher since I was little and went to school with my grandmother who was a teacher. That's all I thought about. But that's not how teachers are feeling now. They can't wait to retire, or they're not going into the profession. Something has got to change. The respect, the appreciation. And so it is good to see programs where, again, it shows that we value teachers and their influence on our students.
I really didn't come here prepared to speak tonight, but I just did want to comment on a couple of things. First off, this is a wonderful opportunity. Most of you know I'm Lori A.P. Cockrell. So, and I just finished my 33rd year teaching in Warren County Public Schools, and I'm not ready to retire, which for whatever it's worth. But this opportunity is a wonderful opportunity. I have worked with instructional assistants, paraprofessionals that absolutely could do my job. They, it's almost like hands-on watching as you go. And I know I myself have encouraged, I've encouraged some of our paraprofessionals who have gone on to get their degree. I've encouraged substitutes. You're really great at this. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of encouragement, but financially, this would be a huge thing. And I love the idea of grow your own. They're comfortable within the school system, and so they even know the kids, they know the families. I just think this is a wonderful opportunity, so I hope you all will consider it.
Anyone else on this item? Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that the Grow Your Own Memorandum of Understanding between James Madison University and Laurel Ridge Community College and Warren County Public Schools be approved as presented, and the superintendent to be authorized to sign the MOU.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Great, thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Actually, we'll just be back at 7:05. All right, I have 7:05, so next up on our agenda, we have appointment of the clerk of the board, Dr. Ballinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, last month we appointed Mr. Grant as the deputy clerk, but then our longtime clerk, Warren County School Board, resigned, Mr. Valentine, and so tonight I'm asking that the board approve Mr. Grant as the clerk for the Warren County School Board starting tonight.
Any questions? Public comment? Is there any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
I move that Timothy A. Grant be appointed as the clerk of the board for a term commencing August 3rd, 2022 and expiring December 31st, 2022 as recommended by the division superintendent.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I'd just like to take a minute to thank Mr. Valentine for all the years that he served as clerk of the board. It was a huge job. Well missed. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Next up is appointment of deputy clerk of the board, Dr. Ballinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Due to the resignation of the current deputy clerk of the Warren County School Board, it is recommended that Douglas Stefanowski be appointed as the deputy clerk of the Warren County School Board for a term commencing August 3rd, 2022, expiring December 31st, 2022. I need to amend that August 3rd. It's not August 3rd. That should be August 17th. That should be today's date. So please make sure that that is in the motion, that it's today's date, not August the 3rd.
Any questions for Dr. Ballinger? Is there a motion?
I move that Douglas Stefanowski be appointed as the deputy clerk of the board for a term commencing August 17th, 2022 and expiring December 31st, 2022 as recommended by the division superintendent.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Great, thank you. Next up is a 22-23 calendar adjustment, Mr. Smith.
Good evening. The current 2022-23 school calendar does not include an in-person parent-teacher conference. With the importance of increasing family engagement, an in-person parent-teacher conference is recommended. October 10th, 2022 is scheduled as a professional day for staff and could be adjusted as a parent-teacher conference day. So I would be requesting, recommending if that particular date could be changed from a professional day to a parent-teacher conference.
And just to clarify, kids are already not at school that day.
That's correct.
That's correct. That is correct. That was a non-school day. And we did have, Madam Chair, we did have some teachers that were concerned with not having the parent-teacher conference as a scheduled time, that they're having to do it after school, before school, during their planning period. And so we just discussed the possibilities of just taking that professional day and not having staff report until 12 o'clock, and then they can stay till 7. And so that would also give them the time to work in their classroom, schedule their parents, and have that day as far as to help with our family engagement, as Mr. Smith mentioned. But also give them a dedicated day. This way they're not having to work outside and during their plan to contact parents concerning progress of children.
Any additional questions on this? Is there public comment on this? Thank you for reminding me. Not used to it this way at the work session. All right, is there a motion?
I move that the Warren County School Board approves the recommendation of the October 10th, 2022 as a parent-teacher conference day from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. This change would replace the scheduled professional work day on October 10th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Great, thank you. Okay, next up is approval of expenditure over $15,000 food and nutrition services point of sale software and hardware support package. Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. Approval is requested to renew the enterprise point of sale software and hardware package from Data Business System for our food and nutrition program. This system is used in all our cafeterias. This program automates sales activities, meals and eligibility counts, and provides data for the state and federal reports. The software processes cafeteria sales, tracks items sold, generates reports, and provides information on meals purchased. This system allows parents to put money, and we're currently in our CEP, but this system is a system that we've used for many years. And this system also allows for parents to put money on student lunch accounts. Also, parents are able to monitor their child's purchases and so forth for breakfast and lunch using this online system. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of this point-of-sale software and hardware package from Data Business Systems for the food and nutrition program. The financing for this comes from our food and nutrition funding. So it's the program that we've run with our registers and so forth for some time now.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Any public comment? Is there a motion?
I move approval be given to purchase the point-of-sale software and hardware support package from Data Business Systems in the amount of $18,370.28.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. Revision to School Board Policy BCE, School Board Committee, Mr. Smith.
Okay, this is actually a clerical cleanup, and I'm not sure if by chance through your board docs, if there is an attachment. Do you have an attachment? Okay, excellent. All right. When School Board Policy BCE, School Board Committees, was adopted on May 4th, 2022, the Budget Committee was inadvertently not included. So this would be a clerical correction to add as far as one of our committees, the Budget Committee.
Any questions for Mr. Smith?
So we already have a budget committee, but we're just making it official and adding it in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any public comment on this? Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the Warren County School Board approves the addition of the Budget Committee to Policy BCE, School Board Committees.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Great, thank you, Mr. Smith. Next up is approval of the Building Committee's recommendation on scope of and contractor for the LFK renovation project.
Our building committee met earlier this evening, prior to this meeting, to look over our bids that we received. We received 2 bids, one from Taft Construction, one from LCW Construction. Our building committee met this afternoon to look over the cost of those bids. That information, a bid tabulation sheet, should be attached to your board docs, and the building committee met and would like to make a recommendation, and I believe Ms. Salins.
So I'd like to recommend, because with the additions that were selected, it makes the bid very close, and since our lawyer is not here tonight to review that, I would like to move that we have a special meeting to vote on that at a time after the lawyer can review.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on this? So you'll contact
So
Mr. King?
Mr. Smith will work with the attorney, but one thing we will need to do, because timelines are of the essence, so we may need to schedule a special meeting before the September meeting, just to get this ball rolling so that we can get the the contractors to be able to order and have those shipments? Because I think some lead times are, they're extensive.
For certain things, so we really need to get this meeting scheduled for like next week.
Yeah.
Like
He'll be back in
immediately.
town at the beginning of next week.
On the 22nd, he's supposed to be, I believe, back on the 22nd, so.
Any further discussion on this?
Will we schedule this now, or are we gonna schedule this?
Well, I mean,
I guess it
it would
depends
rely
on
on
him.
what Brad can do.
When
Yes, right.
we could reach the attorney, I mean, you can,
I mean, we could try to do it next Wednesday, right? Or is that the point?
yeah, I mean, if you want to try to schedule a special meeting on the 24th, I mean, that is,
It would be extremely helpful if we had something scheduled for next week.
Yeah.
And we can get legal counsel between now and then. The contracts and so, or not the contracts, the bids and so forth that are put out are normally a 30-day bid. We also have to go through a process after that with contracts to make sure that the contracts by who we select, that our attorney as well as their attorney, it matches up. So next week would be ideal.
I'm fine with the 23rd or 24th, which would be Tuesday or
I can't do
Wednesday.
the 23rd, but the 24th I could do.
Yeah, I'd prefer the
5. Do you like the 5 o'clock
Can we do 5:30?
5:30?
as long as the 24th, that way it gives us a couple of days to reach Brad.
Okay, all right. So we'll say tentatively 5:30 on the 24th, as long as
At the school board office?
at the school board office. Right? Just,
Or you can have it here if you want, or wherever you want to have it.
is there something else?
I think it'll probably be pretty quick.
We can have it there in that
In that little conference thing? Yeah, we'll just do it there. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, so the motion is to table for tonight. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no? Great, thank you. We'll plan to meet on the 24th at 5:30 at the school board office. Okay, and then we have our additional action item, which is discussion and possible approval of Warren County Public Schools 22-23 Crisis Management Plan. That's Mr. Hirsch.
Madam Chair, Dr. Ballinger, members of the school board, thanks for the opportunity to discuss our crisis plan. It's not a one-time a year thing where we develop a crisis plan and say, okay, we're all set for safety. We do this 24/7. We do it all year long, and we do it in collaboration with the Warren County Sheriff's Office, the Front Royal Police Department, EMS services, as well as the fire station, the fire people. And what we do is a variety of things. But as I said in my explanation, a crisis can impact a single building or an entire school division. The most crucial consideration in dealing with a crisis for our students and staff is our students and staff's health, safety, and welfare. And this plan intends to provide staff with guidelines and pre-planned responses, a variety of pre-planned responses to various emergencies and crisis situations. It's not an answer-all, but it is a plan. This year we added some interesting components to our crisis plan. I want to talk about those briefly. The Department of Juvenile Justice, who we work with in creating our safety audits and our safety plans, created what's called a safety audit committee. That committee never existed before. So each of the schools did what's called a safety survey. Worked very hard with Mr. Vsba as well as the principals in going through the school and answering a variety of questions that pertain to safety. What the Safety Audit Committee, which is new, does is we take all those responses and we send it to our Safety Audit Committee, who gives the feedback to me while we're creating the plan. So we send it to the fire chief, the chief of police, the sheriff, as well as the EMS folks, and get all that information in. And it's instead of just doing those independent kind of surveys, we have a universal kind of perspective that can be reviewed by the safety professionals. In addition, we created, well, EMS created what's called an incident command structure. So if there is a crisis, we practiced over the summer under Dr. Ballinger's leadership in creating an incident command structure in each school and in the school division. So if there were some sort of situation that we had to deal with and had an incident command, let's say right outside here of 15th Street, there would be an incident command structure from the school division and an incident command structure from this building that have roles and responsibilities already known to them, so they can implement whatever needed to be implemented to ensure our safety of our staff and students. We also added to our lockdown procedures what are called secure the building. So in the past, when we did a lockdown for whatever reason, we shut down operations. Nobody could get in or out of the building, and students were in a safe place. With a secure the building lockdown, what it does, let me give you an example. Let's say if there was a bear outside here, and we couldn't allow the kindergartners or anybody to go outside. So we would call a secure the building lockdown, or a soft lockdown. We're trying to stay away from that because we don't want to get them confused. So a secure the building call, and then the doors would be shut. Police would be called. The sheriff would be called. The operations inside the school would go on, but there would be a heightened sense of alert if that secure the building had to turn into something a little more serious where we went into a full lockdown. So that's new. And the last addition to the crisis plan is we have a standing order now with the Department of Health to provide stock albuterol, and that is coming down from the Department of Education. We have stock, right now we have stock epinephrine in all of our buildings. We send them on field trips, to make sure that students that maybe aren't diagnosed with anaphylactic kind of, or an allergy, the pens are available for us to use if there is a crisis, because they might not be carrying their own epinephrine. The same is true with albuterol. And we have now a standing order to have stock albuterol at all of our buildings. So those are the 4 new things to our crisis plan that we added, but I did want to emphasize that the collaboration with our safety personnel, with our community partners, is stronger than ever, and they have been, and frankly, I really credit Dr. Ballinger and his leadership with forging with those agencies, with their leaders, to make safety paramount. And so I'm very confident in our plan, and I'd love to entertain some questions. I will be putting them on jump drives. I can remember 9/11 quite vividly in the school division, and I can remember one thing that did happen was all communication was done. There was no electronics, there was no laptops, there was no computers, or no nothing. So they needed paper copies. They will have paper copies, but now we're also going to provide jump drives that they can wear around their neck so they can access remote devices or whatever to access the crisis plan through that as well. And if you guys would like copies of that, I can get you copies of those too.
Is there any public comment? Is there a motion?
I move that the 2022-2023 Warren County Public Schools Crisis Management Plan be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Great, thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Okay, so I think that ends our action agenda for this evening. Moving into the work session, we have Facilities, Child Nutrition, and Transportation Report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Just a few points from each department, and then I have Mr. Mitchell who will come up, and he has a presentation for us as part of this presentation. From Ms. Kinsey in Child Nutrition, we had a visit from our Vdoe Region 4 specialist, Karen Howard, stopped in a week or so ago. And we were able to cover our annual goals with her. She was very supportive of our plan and our approach to be able to have our students eat for free. Our annual Vdoe managers meeting was held on August 1st. It was a great experience for her entire team, and she attended the annual all-staff opening meetings and safety trainings as part of our food service on August the 8th. Currently, as far as vacancies, we have 3 open part-time positions that we're currently working on filling. So for full-time positions, we're in a good place. We updated our marketing in all elementaries and high schools, and are working on our middle school marketing wrap-up now. Our middle school program was called Did You Know Cafe, but we're moving to a new marketing program called Foodies Cafe, which has new recipes such as smoothie bowls, noodle bowls, rice bowls, and a more variety of the menu. Our food service department, they're partnering with Fort Valley Farm in Sperryville to provide some local peaches and local apples in our kitchens during the school year. They have successfully implemented the first chance hot breakfast and second chance grab and go at both middle schools, so that we have both options there. High school is still using the model, and elementary is using grab and go only, with both a hot and cold options for students. In facilities, Mr. Levesey and his staff first, E. Wilson Morrison Elementary School, the installation of an additional 6-foot-high metal fencing for playground and bus loop was to begin on the 15th of August. The estimated duration, weather permitting, is 10 days. There were some damaged trees removed from the front of the school. Staff obtained estimates to replace existing chain link fence with metal fencing and required asphalt work once tree stumps and roots have been removed. Update for the Blue Ridge Technical Center roof. Contractor scheduled to begin work week of August 15th. Initial work to include the installation of safety railings around the roof perimeter prior to removal and replacing of existing roof. Another area that we're working on with our Mr. Hirsch with our crisis management plan, as well as with facilities, is our digital mapping of our schools facility as part of a state safety initiative. Staff received approval from the Department of Criminal Justice Services the week of August 8th for digital mapping for first responders. Our staff has been working with contractors to arrange site visits for floor plan verifications. Central office staff attended the Department of Criminal Justice Services informational webinar for digital mapping on Monday, August the 15th. So this process is all underway. So we've applied for a grant. We have been notified that we will receive a grant. We have reached out to one of the state companies and so forth, and we're providing information, and we'll bring some more information of this to our next meeting to be able to start looking at creating digital plans of our schools that would be for our first responders in case of an emergency of some sort. Rather than having very large notebooks here and there, this information can be for our first responders as they arrive to have this access to know where entry points would be and where different type of apparatuses and mechanical type things would be in the building and those type of things. It's just better to serve and be protective. Staffing. The groundskeeper for Warren County High School that we had decided this role was probably not for him, so he resigned. But we have scheduled interviews for the vacancy as applications have become available. The new hire grounds person for Skyline High School started on the 15th of August. And a new plumber for a vacant position will start work on Monday, August the 22nd. So we're fortunate there to find those individuals with those tremendous skills that help us. Our transportation, some updates. Our 7 new school buses are slated to start production in January of 2023. As Mr. Levesey had mentioned earlier, there's lots of lead time on equipment for building stuff, and buses are one of those things that they have to build, so that also has a lead time. 6 of the units will be standard 77 passenger buses, and 1 will be a 77 passenger unit with a wheelchair lift. All of these units will go into service immediately to replace units past their service life. The Wi-Fi devices have been installed on our buses by our shop. These, the units themselves were funded by grant money. Our driving status is great. We currently have 7 sub-drivers, and that's from my role and to be in my current role back to HR. I'm not sure I recall ever being up to 7 sub-drivers, so that's good. In cooperation with special services, actually, I'm going to bring Mr. Mitchell up on this one because this is where we're going to go to next. As I was reading through, I'm going to ask Mr. Mitchell to come up because he has a presentation of something that he would like to show the entire group in regards to a purchase that you've all approved previously and how that will go into effect for our students. So, Mr. Mitchell.
You would think,
let me have that. That's got my cheat sheet. You got your cheat sheet on.
you would think as Director of Transportation, I would be used to being thrown under the bus because Buck, like literally 2 minutes ago, said, hey, you don't mind knocking that out for me. So anyway, so I got to refresh what I wrote. What Buck started to say, and it's in cooperation with special services. This would not have happened without a co-effort between 2 departments that both were pursuing the same need. We've been trying to get this particular vehicle for some time. The funding was never there. And then my good friend, old Mike, just happened to say, hey, we have some CARES money that we could use that to purchase these vehicles. And what makes these vehicles really special for us is it gives us the ultimate flexibility because we don't compromise any seating for the daily usage that they're done for out-of-county transport or in-county. However, it does allow us to include those students that are in those wheelchairs. They can go on those regular trips, and that's why you're seeing us start integrating that with our school buses as well. It's my position, if someone is, for whatever reason, in a wheelchair or has some level of restriction, and they want to go on a field trip, they shouldn't have to be in a special bus or a different bus. They should be able to get on a big yellow bus with everybody else in their class and go. And this is just one more component of that for when students have to be in an out-of-county program, they don't have to be separate. They can be included in that least restricted environment that we strive to do every single day.
Right, what these dollars were, it's
and unfortunately Mike's going to talk, so I can
through the American Rescue Plan, there were some dollars that flowed through the IDEA. And it had to be used to support students with disabilities. However, at the same time, to mitigate the impact of what the American Rescue Plan was for, to mitigate the strategies of any kind of infectious disease. So the thought was utilizing, getting vans with wheelchairs, we could avoid, if we need to, having students with significant fragile medical conditions piled together in single vehicles, so we could transport them in a safer way. And now that's being translated into exactly what Mr. Mitchell's talking about. And one of the reasons why that we wanted to do this, if we are really supporting kids through the additional dollars that the government has gave us. But in 5 years, what's going to be around, right? What are we going to remember? Vehicles. And we will have 5 state-of-the-art vehicles that are wheelchair accessible for our students.
Well, that being said, I have one out front. I know you're welcome to come look now if you want, or I'll stay till the end of the meeting, and if somebody wants to see after, whatever. Madam Chair, that's...
I say let's go take a walk and look at it.
Cool.
Come on, Mike, I should have brought a chair so you could have demoed this for us. But one of the beauties of this particular unit and why we were this was my push, is this isn't a modified van like you bought a Dodge Caravan or whatever and they cut the back out of it. We looked at them. This is Braun, the manufacturer itself takes that particular chassis and puts their chassis in it. So it's their own concept, it's their own everything. It's not trying to unbolt seats to make accommodations. As you can see, the regular seat where we can sit 2 more students folds up out of the way with minimal effort. But again, if we need to, if we're normally using a car, we can only haul 3 kids in, I can still haul 5 here easily without compromising. Okay.
And Aaron, we now have capability to go to the top of the mountain where we couldn't go.
Well, we could get a school bus there. That was for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I think next up we have an instructional update, and that's going to be Mrs. Bragg.
And actually, we can remove that because I set this table here for you guys to sit at while you're talking, since we're doing more of a...
Okay.
I forgot to tell them.
That's okay.
Good evening. I do not have a field trip or a brand new vehicle to go with the instruction report, but maybe next time. First of all, we're excited to be back in school and to open the 22-23 school year. I'm going to go over a couple things that we did prior to the school year starting and our teacher preparation for the return of our students, and then give you a little bit of information about some upcoming dates and things like that that we're looking forward to towards the end of the month and into the beginning days of September. In preparation for the return of our students during our Teacher Back to School Week, we had several presentations and trainings to include 2 national speakers that came to work with our secondary schools. Skyline Middle School's administration had worked to secure Mr. John Almarode, who is an author and associate professor at James Madison University, and he worked with the faculty at Skyline Middle on high-impact teaching strategies and instructional design that leads and supports student success. And I got a chance to go over there on that Friday morning and sit in on some of that training, and Mr. Almarode is very high energy. He's a great speaker. The faculty was definitely engaged and thinking about their progress of practice and things that they were going to work towards at Skyline Middle School with engagement of students and making the learning visible to both the teachers and to the students. So it was a great presentation, and he's a very dynamic speaker. We also had with us that week Mr. Ron Nash, who presented to our high school faculty. He met with both Skyline High School and Warren County High School, and his message revolved around a book that he's recently written called The Power of We, and it was about creating positive and collaborative classroom communities and looking at how specifically our high schools can engage our students and practices that they can put in place within the classrooms to get those high school students involved in more small group work and engaging with one another and talking more about their learning as they're in the classroom. Mr. Nash also was our keynote speaker at Convocation, and his message during Convocation to all of our staff members was about organizational improvement and reflection and kind of that customer service element that schools are providing everywhere from the front office all the way into the classroom. So his presentation kind of tied us all together that are involved in seeing our students on a daily basis and interacting with them as far as that customer service side of education goes. So we also, during that week, preparing to come back for students, we had several textbook trainings that were happening at our middle schools. I met with middle school English and math teachers to reintroduce and highlight some of the things that are available through our online textbooks. The online textbooks, if you aren't familiar with them, be happy to show them to you. It's more than just a PDF version of a textbook. The online textbooks used to just be kind of PDF versions of the book in front of the students. Now they come with a lot of additional supports and things like that that are accessible to our teachers and our students. And it's a much more interactive experience with online textbooks now. So we went over things like resources for differentiation and intervention, assuring alignment to the Virginia standards, and also some of the teacher support that's available in those textbooks, which I think is very helpful to our new teachers and our teachers that are in our classrooms that maybe don't have as much of experience. So for example, in the math book, which our math book at middle school is called Envisions, in that particular book, they have some videos and things like that for each lesson and unit that helps teachers know what they need to be listening for and looking for to ensure that the students are understanding the concepts. So they have look for videos that helps teachers prepare themselves for what they can be listening for in student discourse to understand that they are understanding the concepts that are being taught. So we went over some things like that in our textbook support. And then also at middle school, our science textbook, that publisher is, it's STEM Scopes is the title of it. They held a 3-hour in-person training for implementing the online textbook, which is a digital curriculum, and their hands-on approach to science. The online digital curriculum with STEM Scopes came with many, many boxes of hands-on experiments and things like that for our students to engage in. And while we had STEM Scopes last year, due to shipping delays and that sort of thing, there was some delay in getting those hands-on kits. So they came to do kind of a reintroduction and next steps for the textbook, because we now have all of our resources in place and getting the teachers excited about creating those experiential opportunities for our kids in the science classroom. I think the purpose of our science instruction, kind of the focus of it this year, is going to revolve around opportunities for the students to engage and do science and not just sit and learn about science vocabulary and that sort of thing. That can come, but integrating that into that engagement and hands-on opportunities is a big part of what we're doing to address our science support this coming school year. And we know that science is an area that we need to work on, and we're also aware that the science standards of learning test changes for the spring test administration. So we have a new test coming. There's a new item type on it. So there's lots of change coming with science at a time when we know that science also needs to be a focus in our classrooms. So at the beginning of September, our science learning communities for elementary and middle school will be holding their first meetings. And the topic of those professional learning communities coincides with other things that are already happening in our science classroom. So it's not something additional. So for example, at middle school, that it's a professional learning community. They call it a science learning community, and SLC is talking about using 5E instructional models for engaging students in learning, in the learning of science, and that model is exactly how the STEM Scopes online digital curriculum set up. It's also a 5E model. So it's not competing initiatives. It's designed to support things that are already in place in our science classrooms and improve our practice. So some upcoming things that are happening towards the end of August and into September. The State required testing will begin at the end of August here, and the start of next week is when that window will open. And those state required tests will include for our younger elementary students tests like a VKRP, which is a math assessment for our kindergartners, PALS, which covers reading for K2, and then also those state growth assessments for English and math in grades 3 through 8. We'll start taking those growth assessments at the end of August. The last up and coming date that I'll mention is that September 22nd is when the 22-23 state accreditation ratings will be released to the public. So that's coming up on the calendar towards the end of September. Are there any questions or?
Thank you. Yep. Next up, we have the CNA stipend, and that's Mr. Hirsch.
Madam Chair, Dr. Ballinger, members of the board, Warren County Schools serve students with a variety of academic, behavioral, and medical needs. Our school nurses and classroom staff work with parents and community-based professionals to implement student health care plans on a daily basis. In some cases, students require support all day, and an instructional assistant is assigned to carry out these assigned duties. We provide training, of course, through Valley Health and our school nurses to the instructional assistants, and try to hire certified nursing assistants to fill that role, and are successful in doing so on occasion. These duties can include toilet etiquette, specialized feeding, stretching and exercise, and much more. Warren County Schools has attempted to hire certified nursing assistants to do the work. With the ability to be reimbursed by the state through Medicaid billing and through what's called Vsba, which is Students with Intensive Support Needs, the A is just the application, we can get reimbursement well in excess to the stipend that we're recommending to support our CNAs that are working with our most fragile population. So what we're asking is to use these reimbursements to apply a $5,000 stipend to their salaries at no local cost. The Vsba is a very, very new program. This is year 2. And we were very early in the learning curve, and we understand the program quite well and have been accessing revenue to support our most fragile kids. So we're very confident that this can happen and will happen, and we can compensate those instructional assistants that are working with this population.
And approximately how many instructional assistants do we have that serve those students that would meet this criteria with the CNA?
Currently there are 3. Currently there are 3 CNAs working with specific individuals with those needs. But it'll also allow us to recruit more, hopefully, to support that population.
So we had this as a work session item tonight, but I would just ask that, everybody asks questions that they have for Mr. Hirsch, and then hopefully we can move it to an action item for our September meeting.
Mr. Hirsch, is this what you're recommending to allocate funds that we already are going to be expecting in his inner budget, or would this be additional funding that would come in if we approved this?
What will happen is we do Medicaid billing for occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy and things like that. With a CNA providing this level of support, we can start billing, and with the new software that you approved a couple months ago, we're able to capture the information that we need to capture Medicaid reimbursement for personal care services. So we'll bill for direct services for personal care services. We'll also get a piece of that administrative claiming. I don't want to get in the weeds, but in addition to that, students that qualify as a student with intensive needs and supports, we identify and we work with the state in getting a reimbursement for services multiplied by our composite index to get those dollars back, so we can provide the best equipment, the best curriculum, the best stuff in those classrooms, which we do. and that's another way we maximize those resources. So the answer to your question is it will take no additional funding locally.
So this would be new revenue. You would have to ask for an increase in appropriation because this would be a new revenue stream coming in.
I know that sometimes parents have the option to not have their Medicaid billed. Is this still going to be a case where if they're in that situation, when they'll still be asked if they...
Absolutely.
Okay.
If a parent decides not to bill Medicaid, then we wouldn't claim through Medicaid, but the student will still qualify for Cissna. And Cissna, where is the bulk of the money is coming from?
Any additional questions or discussions with Mr. Hirsch for this evening? Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm going to skip to Mr. Goodwin with the personnel update real quick.
Good evening again. I don't often get to sit at the table, so thank you. I wanted to share with you a text I just received while I was sitting next to Walt Mabe just a moment ago. This is from an employee that's on the personnel report tonight. I won't say who she is. Hey Shane, sorry to bug you at night, but I just had a quick question. I saw my name on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Does this mean I'm good to go to work starting tomorrow? Thanks so much, exclamation point. I said, yes it does. Are you ready? And she said, okay, great. I am so ready to get started. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity we have to hire people, and lots of people are really excited about joining our team. I kind of wanted to answer questions for you tonight, but also provide just a few bits of data. Dr. Ballinger asked me to be ready to just kind of give you an update this evening. The Virginia Department of Education has identified a number of critical shortage areas. So if I can tell you what those are, and you may know them already, then I'm going to tell you about the jobs that we still have to fill. So you kind of will obviously probably see a match. These are the 2022-2023 school year Department of Education critical shortage positions for which we can also hire someone who continues to be a retiree. Many times you all have asked about our retirees available, and we've hired a number of those. Elementary education, pre-K through 6, special education, middle education, grades 6 through 8, career and technical education, mathematics, grades 6 through 12, including Algebra 1, secondary science, foreign language, pre-K through 12, secondary English, history and social science at the secondary level, and then health and physical education. So because the Virginia Department of Education has identified those areas, we can again hire people who are retired, and they can continue to participate in the Virginia retirement system. I want to kind of paint a picture for you because a lot of times I hear, tell me about the numbers. So last year we had 23 retirees. I think a number of you have asked over time how many people retired last year. That's what we have collected. I think there actually were 25. And as I looked at resignations for last year, we had over 100, almost 120, so a lot. So many times you all ask me questions and about exit interviews and data. We are currently working on making that opportunity available through a collection system, which is basically our exit interview process put on an electronic form so that we can begin to gather and share data for you to kind of see where people are going. People give us reasons that they leave, but a lot of times those reasons aren't explained in great detail. So I know I'm working on that. Dr. Ballinger is helping me work on that so that we can get the information to you. Obviously, that's not so specific that you know why a person left, but why are people leaving? We want to answer that question for you. And of course, we're not the only folks that are facing a shortage in teachers and an exodus from the profession. However, I was talking to someone a minute ago. This year, I've hired my next door neighbor. I hired someone today who was working in town at Rural King. I have 3 people who were working at Martin's. And I've bumped into people at a number of places. We hired someone from the ABC store. So, you know, you never know when folks come in, but this is a great community to live in, full of really good people. And so I'm happy to say tonight that I have filled, out of those people who have left, all but 19 of those positions. So I want to kind of detail for you what they are and then answer your questions if I could. 6 of those positions happen to be instructional assistant positions. 11 of those are teacher positions, and 2 of those are maintenance positions. You heard Mr. Smith a minute ago say we hired someone and then they decided they weren't able to stay, so that opened a position back up in that area. If you don't mind, I'm just going to run down by each location and tell you what's available there. That might give you a little bit of an idea. So at central office, if I start with there, we do have Ms. Bragg who's here. She is our new, obviously, assistant superintendent for instruction, so that was filled. So at AS Roads, we have 1 position open. Someone has the need to leave there, so that position is not actually open until September 17th. Someone will be in it until that time. But that's a student support instructional assistant that's funded through the CARES grant that we have. I should be able to fill that position without too much trouble. E. Wilson Morrison, we had the 4th grade teacher position there filled, and in that case the position wasn't able to stay in it, so I did post that again today. You may see there's a 4th grade teacher position that's there at E. Wilson Morrison. We kept the employee in a different role, which was a good thing because we filled the position that was open, but that's a critical position, just like the instructional assistant position obviously at AS Roads. So that and Hilda Barber. The only thing I have at Hilda Barber, well, those are actually, I filled those, so we're good in that location. LFK, we have a Pathways and Connections special education teacher, which is obviously very important. It's a teacher position. We've identified a candidate that will be interviewed, hopefully, and candidates. There aren't a lot of people out there right now for special education, but we're working on that. The principal has a line, I think, on that person. Ressie Jeffries is in really good shape, other than they have a special education assistant position open. Ms. Casella, who works with Mike Hirsch, has sent me the name of someone. They're working on the qualifications for that role. Because that's a Title I school, you have to be highly qualified or take the Parapro Praxis examination, so we're working on those. Skyline Middle School, there's a 7th and 8th grade math position there. Again, back to that critical shortage position. Those are really important. In this instance, we have teachers that are already teaching 3 out of the 4 blocks, taking on an extra block in a number of ways to cover those classes, but we continue to seek candidates for that. So if there's anyone out there, as I pan to the camera, that's interested in that, please contact me. We'd love to talk with someone about those positions. The principal there, Mr. Johnston, continues to work really hard to find someone, but math is a really hard position to find and fill. But he's done a great job with the other positions that are there at school. We filled a lot of those. Warren County Middle School, as we look at that, we have a family and consumer science position there we were unable to fill. We continue to look for a person that's there. That's a teacher position. There's currently a long-term substitute that's working in that role through our agreement with the ESS service, but we continue to have it posted and continue to look, and hopefully we'll find someone. And then the agriculture teacher there, the ag teacher, we do not have an ag teacher that we've been able to locate. So in that case, the principal shifted classes around, so ag is going to be in the spring, not in the fall. So I won't say we're okay right now because we really need that teacher and we would shift classes back. However, we don't have one, so we can offer that in the spring. Our administrators and leaders have to be creative sometimes to cover these things. Skyline High School, we have 2 math teachers positions opened. So that's 4. If you listened just a minute ago, of course, Skyline Middle School 2, we have 2 here. They're critical positions. Again, the principals figured out how to cover those through people teaching extra instructional blocks as we worked on last year. The other positions there have been hired. For Warren County High School, we need a math teacher. We have 2 teachers that are at Warren County High School covering those classes. We need an English teacher. We had someone under contract, and then before they began, they were not able to stay with us, so we have an English teacher open there. I did talk to someone today I hope to maybe be able to get for that. Special education instructional assistant is open. We moved someone who had a college degree from an instructional assistant position into a teacher role, which was even better. We just then created an opening though, so we need to have that filled. And then they also have 2 classroom support instructional assistant positions open. Those are the positions that you all allowed us to implement last year that go from one room to the other supporting students throughout the school day. Blue Ridge Technical Center, we were able to hire the criminal justice person that I think we talked a little bit about at the table, thanks to I think Ms. Salins and Dolores Oates and some others who kind of worked together. They sent me a really good candidate, so that person is going to start with us. I'm really excited about that, very, very qualified. And then we have a part-time CNA instructor position there that needs to be filled due to a resignation. division-wide, and when I say that, a lot of times Mr. Hirsch's programs and things, they serve all the schools, so we call those division-wide. Last meeting, you all approved 3 preschool assistants and a teacher. We've already hired the teacher and one of those assistants. I still need to hire 2 more preschool assistants if anybody's out there and interested. And then, of course, our maintenance department, I did share with you a minute ago about the resignation. So we have a groundskeeper position open. And a maintenance journeyman, we really need someone with HVAC, specifically HVAC experience, and that's been hard for us to find as well. So all total, we have 6 assistants, 11 teachers, and 2 maintenance positions. If you add those numbers all together, it's 19. So I'm proud of the people we've hired. I mean, they're incredible people that have joined us in our positions, and they're excited to work here and join the team of really great people we have. I'm proud of our leaders for working and recruiting so hard. I think we need to continue to tell the great story about the kids that are in this community and county and the things we can do together through education. And I know I have a little bit of work yet to do, but I enjoy the opportunity. So I thank you for allowing me to serve in this role, Dr. Ballinger and board. And I just want to make sure I answer any questions you may have based on my report.
I'll tell you, if you're ever in the hallway and you're walking down that hall and you hear all these bells going off, it's not a carnival game, it's Shane hiring somebody. So sometimes you may think that you're entering into a carnival listening to the bells just ringing away in there. So Mr. Goodwin has done a great job this year, and I appreciate the work that he's put in. And I know there's a lot of those candidates that he actually hired, but then turned around and said, I can't do it for this reason or that reason. So, you know, those numbers always fluctuate. And I know at one point when I talked to him, he said, I think I'm down to 8. And so, you know, and now with some other people that we've hired that they come in, it doesn't work out, that number grows back up a little bit. So, but he continues to plug and do a good job. So I want to say thank you for that.
I appreciate the compliment. And I do ring a bell every time I hire anyone. So if you're ever there, my grandmother gave me this bell a long, long time ago. My grandmother, Rosalie. And so it's one of those antique like store bells. If you ever went to like an old store, like an old mercantile, and it's kind of like you ring it to get somebody's attention. So every time I hire somebody, I hit that thing and people are cheering in the office. So it's kind of fun. So.
Well, I have to say a couple of things about you, because and I'll stop in and talk with you, and I have never been around a person who is so upbeat all the time. And then we'll discuss something and you'll give me some advice, and it's the right advice. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
But you owe me coffee.
I do. I owe you a lot of coffee every day. So. Any other questions that you might have?
Thank you for all the hard work that you're
yes,
doing.
thank
Thank you for what you're
Thanks
doing.
very much.
Great. Last item is going to be a discussion of the 2023 budget MOU for unexpended funds and potential revenue sharing agreement.
Tim, can you put that on the screen?
Turn that light off again.
That's all right. I was going to do that. Yep. So as we went through this long budget season, you know, this process started for me back in November when I met with our cost centers to find out what their needs were. So just a few short months, and it's almost been a year on this 23 budget. For me and Rob and other people that's been involved in this, you guys as board members. So there's been a lot of different things that have been put out. This year I will say that the document that Mr. Ballantyne has put together has far surpassed what he's ever had to produce for any budget for Warren County Public Schools. You go in his office and he's got one folder for each school year. I think he's up to 2, maybe working on 3 for this school year. So the work that he's had to put into this, and always remember, it's not easy when all of a sudden we change something and say, hey Rob, fix this in the budget. Well, that takes a long time to work through everything. How many lines are there in our budget, Rob?
Oh, around 1,400.
And so it does take a while to work through those line by line. But what I do want to clarify, and we've heard a lot of different numbers that have been thrown out. Sometimes it's 64 million was our initial last year. We've heard 68 million was our final approved for this year. We've heard that there's a difference of 7 million from one year to the next. And so I just kind of want to just outline everything so that we get a clear picture of where we are. And typically what Warren County has done is we always would compare initial to initial. And so when you compare initial to initial, it doesn't always show any increase in appropriations that happens throughout the year. So for instance, last year we had the increased appropriations, and you should have a, and I'm sorry, when I printed it, it cut off some of the numbers on the side. I was trying to make it a little bigger, but it didn't fit on the paper, so I didn't catch that. So I'll share it with you, so you can look at it. But so just kind of wanted to go through this. When we look at our operational budget, and I want to take away from the operational budget, plus we do have the funds for the capital improvements. And so sometimes that gets gelled together. But we need to understand what we live on and what's going to build our house. And what we live on daily is our operational budget. That's your teacher salaries, that's your fuel, that's cost for technology, that's the instruction, that's the food that we eat daily. Okay, and so I separated kind of the facilities and the capital improvement, because those projects, they're once every 3 to 5 years that maybe you're going to have a big project. Sometimes there's an even larger gap than that. But we were lucky enough this year, and well, I guess with CARES funds, that we were able to put a lot of revenue into one project to really give us a good base for allowing to look at renovating one of our schools that needed a new HVAC, needs the walls within the classrooms to separate, and that meets the definition. So I do just wanted to preface that a little bit when it comes to the operational budget, that I did pull some of those things out. And then we can look at the different slides. But I do want to compare. So when you look at the 22 final budget, we started out with the 63,944. We added a $3,019,000 that was in November, and then we had the $140,000 that we just did, and that was the E-rate. So that put us at 67. Now there's also another million that's on a different page, but that's facilities, and that's what we use to pay for our A&E for Blue Ridge Tech and LFK. So that's why this number is different. So I wanted to point that out, and I'll show you that on the next slide. So when we did our proposed budget, we said, okay, we included this in our proposed budget. I know we included some, but I don't know how much we included. So, but we included the CARES into this budget. So automatically that takes us up on what we're looking at. So when you look at, and I'm just staying up here right now, at the final 22 to the proposed, you look at a $4 million difference. So now you look at where we are, and so this is where we're at right now. And then we'll go through all these at the same time. So now, and we do know that last night there was an approval for 5.7, is that correct? Somewhere in that, yeah, 5.7. And we'll talk about that a little later on. But that is included in this amended amount. So I included that today. And then, so that gets us where we're at here which actually puts us at the 1.2 as far as a deficit in our operation for this year. So in operations, okay? So when we look at where our funding is coming from, I also want to outline this chart. So when we started with our revenue sources, so this is our revenue. We had the state final last year of 32. We got 36 from the state this year. So that's an increase of 3.9 million from the state. We also saw a slight increase in the CARES funding. And what did that go to? You just went out and saw one. So that was one of the things that we added to this budget, that was CARES, to help purchase those vans. So when you look at where our funding comes from, we also had other, and that reduction there was...
Previously, we had provided technology support for the county, and they reimbursed us roughly $107,000. Last year, they went to their own person. It was after we had created last year's budget, so it's showing as a reduction there. So it's a fee for service, basically, that was pulled out.
So it's not anything that we lost as far as revenue coming in, because we were providing a service. So since they're taking the service over, we're not going to be billing them for that service. So it's really a wash for us. But wanted to point that out. So when you look at the actual amended, so the state still stays with us, and then we have the federal, then we have our local. So with that, when you look at where we were at from our proposed and what we were actually funded at last year at the 27,720, and then we proposed for the 27,720. But when you look at the actual amended, you see that there is a 1.3 difference there in the actual amended from the locality side. And then what you also see here is an increase in the debt service, which then balances that out to the 1.215 million. So is everybody, this is where we really are. There's been a lot of numbers thrown out there. 7 million, 3 million, 4 million. But really, this is kind of, I wanted to get this out in front so that we have a clear picture. And I'll go to the one computer. So when we look at our budget by category, and again, how I have this set up is we have our FY22 final versus our 23 proposed. What was the difference between those? Then what was actually first approved for us this year, and then with the amended. And so those numbers should all line up from the previous page that we just saw. So when you look at that, and you can see down here at the bottom is where I pulled out that extra CARES funding. And that's where I pulled out our request for the 18 for LFK, and that's where I pulled out the approved amount of $12,000 for LFK. So I removed all of the capital improvement to really just focus in what we live on, our food, and that's our operations. Because this can muddy the waters a little bit down here. So when we look at what the needs are in our schools, and we compare these, and you guys should be familiar with these two lines right here, with these two columns. And so you know that in instruction, we had a difference. We were asking for a difference of about 2.5, 474,000 in admin and health, 507,000 in pupil transportation, 483,000 in operations, debt service 28,000, technology 52,000. The contingency reserve, we put that into salaries. So we moved that up and did away with contingency to put that up into salaries. So that gave us that difference from one budget year to the next budget year of $4,303,500. So when you compare that now to what was first approved and what was the amended budget right now, so that you're aware. So we do see, and that's why I told you that first slide was reflective of the action taken last night. So at first we were only at 49 million for instruction. And you can see that that 49 million was 2 million under the previous year. So there was no way that we were going to be able to make anything when the funding and instruction goes down $2 million less than the previous year. But going forward, now we're setting at $423,000 above what we requested. And a little later, Rob and I will kind of talk about that to kind of outline what are some next steps and what needs to happen. But as you can see, when we look at this, what I did was I said, okay, here's the final amended in the categories versus what you proposed as a school board. So these numbers over here represent that 1.2 million that right now has been moved to capital improvement. So you can see that in admin and health, the 312,000 in that category, 334,000 right now in the red. For transportation, operations maintenance, 760,000 in the red. Now, one thing I do want to note, and you guys are aware of it because you had to approve it, but when we first got this budget, we didn't have enough in the bond payment to pay for it because it was reduced to 25%, or left at 75% hold, so it was reduced. So we had to move money by a transfer request. You guys approved it. We took it to the Board of Supervisors for them to approve it so that we could make our bond payment. So this actually represents even that transfer within that line. So, but that is where we're at currently right now with the school division with current funding. So that you're aware of, here it is, and I'll share this with you so that you can see that.
Can I clarify a couple of things? I know that we are currently at the FY23 amended portion, so we are not fully funded as to compared to what our board approved. We are still 1.2 short of that, or is it, clarify, is that the final and that 1.2 is going into capital improvement?
So
are we still in a holding?
Right. And so my understanding, and I don't know, so, you know, we have been having those discussions with the budget committee in the, you know, with the anticipation of getting the full funding of the 1.2. That's the conversation. But I've also heard them say that, well, we were in the last meeting when actually the 5.7 was proposed to us, and if you remember, they gave us this sheet. And this is the sheet that has the 5.7 million in instruction, and then down at the bottom, if you remember, it has the 1.215459 million dollars, and that's where they said that the remaining will be held in the county's capital improvement fund in an account titled School Capital Reserve. So right now, I'm just going off of. Right now, our amended budget is this. This says that it's going into a reserve, but still we have to have conversation. But you also remember in that conversation that we were having, one of the concerns or one of the things that they mentioned during that meeting is that it was projected that we were going to have, what was it? I believe it was $1.3 million that the county would need to come up with to help us with salaries next year. I think that was the number, and we'll talk about those numbers here in a minute because Rob did run those for 5%. But remember, I asked the question, you know, are you using this as a savings account by putting it in capital? So that, because they made the statement of, well, we put it over in capital this year, and then when we need it next year, then we'll pull it back out and put it over here. And the statement was, yes, that it's kind of going to, they kind of want to use it as a savings account. And so that was the comment that was made during that meeting. So I don't know if that's where we're at. Again, that just comes to you guys continuing those conversations in a positive way and working with that committee to see if we can still land in those, land with that 1.2 coming back. So this is where we're at as far as right now with that budget and where we are with our amended versus what you approved as a board. So that is the 1.215.
So I'm probably going to skip over this, but I'll run through it real quick. I know we're going to do the budget, the facilities committee met. They're going to meet again. We will have that special meeting next Wednesday. But with this, our bids came in good. So one of the things I wanted to note was that when Mr. Smith ran the numbers just off of taking all of the alternates with the lowest bid and looking at what funding we had coming into us, what we had, and adding the 2.2 from the special projects and with some carryover funds, we were only $109,000 off. Now that does not also include, remember when we put that $1 million on the county side for capital improvement with the $1 million in transportation, if you remember, we earmarked it for the roof at Blue Ridge Tech and the roof at LFK. The $600,000 is not even part of this figure. What we're trying to hope is use that $600,000 towards E. Wilson Morrison. But really and truly, you could take the 109 out of this, and actually Mr. Smith and I met and talked about using that 109 or more of the of our child nutrition funds to help balance some of that out. So numbers are looking good, really good at LFK. And when you look at that bottom number of 109,000, that this is a 2-year project. And there's ways that we can get it. We know we have the child nutrition. We also know that actually the roof for LFK is still sitting on the county side in the capital improvement because that's what it was earmarked for when we requested it. But again, I would like to use that towards E. Wilson Morrison to start getting that going.
And just to be very clear on this, to get to that 109,000, you are not taking into account the 1.215 million that's currently missing from our operating budget.
I don't know. So I'm leaving that.
Right, that's out of the equation.
I'm hoping that's in operation. Now, if that stays in capital,
right,
you're 1.1 to the good.
For
cutting the alternate bid item 1 and bid item 2 that we've got that.
Yeah, and if you cut the bid, is that 650?
Yep.
Yeah, if you cut the 650,000 in the bid alternates, you're there. So there's ways to get there with the funds that we have right now. But I did want to point that out, and as you can see, when Mr. Smith, he put this together, this is the grant funding is coming in at 10.1 million, or almost 10.2. You have the county's funding from their special projects at 2.2. And then you have the carryover, which Mr. Ballantyne will talk about this later on. But at the September meeting, we're going to request from the audit for $1 million to go into capital, 600,000 in transportation. So that's that figure. And then sometime in December, January is when the audit could be ready, or February, March, whenever it is ready. We'll see what that number is. Now, he did estimate 1.3 there. So we would just have to see what that audit was and how that turned out. But it's probably going to be somewhere between the 1.3 to 1.6 again, or in that neighborhood. So, but as that turns out, then so I just wanted to show you where those pots were. So you can see that 600,000 is not listed on here at all on this sheet.
And so just to be amply clear, alternate bid item 4 with the kitchen upgrades, and it includes the walk-in freezer replacement, dishwasher, etc., that can come out of our cafeteria fund, correct?
Yeah, so we can get a bunch of that out of the cafeteria fund when it comes to the kitchen. So we've talked about that. And here's all the alternate bids, because I know you guys don't have, yeah, you do have it on there. Maybe you can't see it. So these are all the alternate bids that are on there, and the total of 675,000. So really and truly, if we can get this with some of that. So the walk-in freezer, that's going to be one of the biggest costs when it comes to that kitchen area. Child Nutrition can buy that walk-in freezer. So the other things that
for the freezer.
yes, but it's money that we don't have to spend.
So are these bid options included in this total price or no?
So-
It's gonna happen, Jim.
All the bid options are included in that first number, right?
I think we gotta cut this.
All the bid options as far as included.
Estimate of total design and construction.
That it is off of the low base bid. So there were two bids. I went ahead and just, for the sake of having a sheet to something, the low base, I'm sorry, the low overall bid between the base and the 6 alternatives. That is what equals to that 13,005. So that's taken the base, okay, all right.
Oh, the construction, okay.
The construction would be 13,005, and then that would be that would say we would take all alternatives. We take all 6 alternatives, and which one would be the lowest of those 2 bids. And as a committee, we have to decide which alternatives we want, but I just said for the sake of it, we accept everything. And then for, then for the cabling and estimate, the cabling and technology, Mr. Grant has suggested that we do a separate bid for cabling, that of technology back into the wall and those type of things. He feels, according to other projects that we've had, that we can get a better quality as well as more that would align with the equipment and so forth that we currently have. So I had to put a placeholder here. So I went to Mr. Grant to find out what that placeholder may be for that cost, and he said put in $800,000. So I'm putting that in as a placeholder. I don't know specifically what that may turn out to be, but that seems to be, he seems pretty solid with that. Some of these other expenses that are coming out of this amount of money, mainly toward the grants, the federal grants that we have, is your A&E. Your A&E for LFK and your A&E for Blue Ridge Tech is also coming out of this. There is a cost of a third-party plan review and so forth that the county has to do to make sure that the plans and so forth all meets code, and that is a cost of $11,000. So when all of those expenses are add up there together, that's where I came up with the $14.8 million. And then on the revenue side, I just identified the funding sources of which we had. The grant funding itself between, actually 4 grants I believe that it is that we have there, works out to be 10 million, a little bit over 10 million. There is a breakdown that I think Dr. Ballinger showed you on another one. The county funding that was identified and the carryover from a previous year and this year put our total generated revenue at 14.6, so the slightly 109,000 difference. That can be made up in multiple different ways. That can be made up through alternatives being left out. It also could be made up through value engineering, of looking at different type of things that you're doing and start to value engineer certain things out to. In the world of construction and those type of things, $100,000 is pretty easy to find.
So it's positive, and when you look at there's what you have it on your list, that's what makes up that 10 million that's coming from the grant funding. And then as far as the alternate bids over there. So really when you look at that at LFK, we're there. We're there in multiple ways, which is good. As long as Mr. Grant's numbers, Mr. Grant can get us there if he decides to put in all the cabling himself, and he could save us a few $100,000. But anyway, all right, so rolling on, continuing on. So at our last meeting with the Budget Committee, they threw out another option and said, okay, let's look at revenue sharing. So one, I'm going to say that this is a lot longer conversation than just making a decision in a week or two. This needs to have some thought put into it. But I did want to kind of just point out what the conversation was as far as when it comes to the revenue sharing and what was being offered. So what was proposed at that last meeting was that, okay, they will take the county property taxes and the other taxes, which includes sales tax and mill tax and all that, and take those two and put those in a pot. And then they want to take out, they said, but we got to take out what we're going to give to the town, which I think is about 30% of one and 5% of another. So when you look, that's called the pilot payment and lodging, I guess. So that's what you would have to deduct from this to come up with a dollar amount that you would use this percentage on. So the percentage that was proposed was 42.47. So what I did was I took and looked at all of the audits and listed the revenues as far as with property taxes and all the taxes together. I did have to get some information as far as these two numbers are only given to the county by the auditor after the audit. So that pilot payment and that lodging tax is figured later. So you'll still see the two, or the gray areas right there. I didn't have numbers for those, so I just estimated. And I left it, so you'll see, for instance, 18-19, I put it at what the 19-20 school year was. So it may have been a little lower than that, but I'd rather err on the side of caution as far as reducing that number versus underestimating that number. So when looking at this, I want to go down here to this blue box. You'll see proposed percentage. So I just took that all the way through. That's that 42.47. And then we had the proposed funding. So this number right below that would have actually been the proposed funding if Warren County's public schools would have been on a revenue sharing at 42.47%. all the way back to 14-15. Okay, so just to, that number is where you're at. How do you get to that number? So one of the things that we had to look at was we said, okay, this number is derived by going and following what the formula they use. So the only audit that we have right now is the 21 audit. And we're in the 23 school year. So you have to go back 2 years to find that number. So what we did to get this number here, you have to take that 42.7 and go back 2 years. So that green, green, and green are tied together. The blues right here actually are showing you, here was the revenue that was generated for that year from those items at the county level and divided by what the actual appropriations were. And that is the percentage of what we got from the actual appropriations that year. So when you look over here to just one over to the 14-15, and just to give an example, so if we would have went on the 42.47% revenue sharing back in 14-15, and that's your number, but you actually received $21 million for that budget year, that would have been a reduction of almost $2.1 million. That would not have been going through if following that percentage. So then you look at over here, this area, there's a couple more green boxes. And so now we're down here in this yellow box. So this is a percent of the previous year versus a percent on a 2-year cycle, which we have to go off a 2-year cycle because the audits are going to be about 2 years behind. So you don't have numbers to go off of except the ones that are actually in the books that the auditor has certified. And so when you look at these percentages, to get this percentage of what this number, what we actually were appropriated, that the schools actually received an appropriation, back to what the total revenue was for those taxes that year for property and other taxes, you can see that percentage is 45.68%. So actually, if you go backwards you see that the percentage is actually a little higher than the 42.47 that was proposed. And so I said, okay, if we can work it to where we can go back 1 year, I know that'd be very hard and difficult, there'd still be a lot of estimation going on, but what if we just went back 1 year instead of 2 years? What would that look like? And so when looking at that, it was at 43%. So there was a little bit, it's still a little more versus what you actually received versus what would have been proposed. So with this model right now, I can't recommend to the board that we jump on anything with the revenue sharing at this point in time. I think that there needs to be more conversation. And I just wanted to put this out here so that you could see and how we came up with those numbers. Because can there be some benefits to it? There could be some benefits to it. Are there some downsides to it? There is. Yeah, I mean, you got positive benefits to everything. But we need to make sure that it's good for the schools, but it's also good for the county too. So, we want to be great partners. And so we've got to make sure that we're looking at it from both sides. I only have 2 more slides, I promise. I know Ralph's sitting over there, ready to go. So I just wanted to recap right now from revenue from the locality. So we're not saying it's a, right now it's not a reduction because it's being moved right now to a different place. So I did want to outline that operations does have an increase or a decrease. Operation does have a decrease right now of $1.2 million. Capital will see an increase right now of that reciprocal of $1.2 million. But also the 2.2 for the LFK project. So you do have that coming in from the county on the LFK project. But when you look at the surplus, so I do want to talk a little bit. Surplus is always, some people say it's new money, some people say it's old money. Revenue or surplus money is from what you just had. It was from a previous year. So it's money that was already, or revenue that was already dedicated to the school board. Now you're just asking to use it in a different way. So really and truly it's not new because you're going to use it for what? One-time expenses. One-time. Huh?
Old money being recycled.
Yeah. So we're going to, we use those for those one-time expenses, like the school buses, like the projects. You can't put that in your budget because it's not something you can count on. So when you look at surplus, it's not new money. It's not new revenue coming into us because it was revenue we already had. There was a savings that year, and so now we're saying, okay, we want to use it for this instead of that. So it was already in the budget and it was already allocated to the schools. All right. And they're always requested for one-time expenses. So with the resolution last night of the $5.7 million, which is going to help us out, but there's still some things we have to do. So when we look at this, in order to provide the 5% salary and the $1,000 bonus to all employees, right now it was all stuck in instruction. That's not where all of our employees are. We have nurses that are in attendance and health. You have bus drivers that are in transportation. Technology in technology. You have all your maintenance men in facilities. And all those people that goes in those categories. So what do we have to do now is Rob has to go back in and look at the budget and say, okay, we now have to ask for transfers of this amount to make sure that everybody gets their share of that 5% and that $1,000 bonus. Because right now it's just an instruction. And so what are you going to be seeing from us and from Rob, and we're going to continue to have the conversations. I know we have another budget committee coming up next week. But at the September meeting, we're going to request the surplus of the FY21 funds. So you will request those, and I believe it's 1.6. So the request, what I would like, would be $1 million to go to capital improvement and $600,000 to transportation. What you also are going to do is, once Rob works off his magic right now with where we are with that other 5.7, you're going to have to now approve that amended budget of the 5.7. Because we are still, right now, if you got things in categories, there are things that we can't do. Because as you saw those numbers, those categories are still short, and like facilities is still short $760,000. So we can't just go and do some of the things that we wanted to do last year. So I'm already getting a little nervous about adding that extra fencing around E. Wilson Morrison. Because that was another project that we couldn't get last year that we had to add this year. So you're doing that project now at the beginning of the year instead of at the end of the year.
Why is it always E. Wilson Morrison that gets cut?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because we're doing the fencing. I'm just a little more nervous about it now. I'm not saying cut it. Yeah, no. No, I'm saying because it's a project that typically we use those funds at the end of the year to do those projects. But because it was such a long lead time, we had to move that project to the beginning of the year this year.
In all fairness, though, something else was purchased instead of that fencing. Remember, it was the $89,000 that we had to spend on the partitions between the urinals because
we didn't spend that. We didn't purchase it. No.
That was discussed in the building committee meeting.
That was just a quote. That was just a quote that we discussed, and there's never been. We haven't purchased those. What we've talked about purchasing and looking at purchasing, but as far as that quote that you looked at,
right, we just financially couldn't do it.
So
that's not how I remember it being presented. We were told at that building committee meeting that we had to forego the, what was it, $27,000 in the fencing because we had to have that. So we just had to forego the fencing just because we had to forego the fencing.
So it got to the point when you get to the end of the year that if you can't get in that fiscal year, you can't get it done. So you have to stop the project because it can't run over into June, past June 30th.
Well, no, I understand all of that, but I mean, Mrs. Colors, I'm not losing my mind here, right? And we had a whole discussion about this situation.
There was an estimate brought up as far as looking at the quotes, but as far as I know of, we have not purchased anything as far as when it comes to partition. Check with Greg, make sure, but I mean, I also had him put a quote together because we were wanting to look at safety at the at central office, where you walk in. You know, we talked about putting safety glass up and doors so that person would be secure. That was about a $30,000 project, but I mean, just because I have the design and I have the numbers, I'm not doing it. But I did look at it just within the last month. But I'll find out for sure. But I have not any knowledge of. What I have talked to Greg about is purchasing some single sides and cutting them to lengthen things. But I don't know if he's even ordered that.
For the bathrooms. Okay.
But I don't know if he's ordered that. But doing some of those total redesigns.
No, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
partitions because I
Yeah. We've talked about it, but I don't know where he's at.
I don't remember if it was. I know it was discussed, but I don't think he spent it yet. I think you're right. You got an estimate, but that hadn't been installed.
We were getting estimates. towards the end of last year, and then it was pushed into that. Yeah. So that was we were getting estimates. I do know that. I'll find out.
It was a huge estimate to do all of it. I remember seeing that.
This is at a building committee meeting, and the way that it was presented to us was that we were having to forego the fence at E. Wilson because of the other. And that was the whole sticking point. There was an entire conversation about it, and it was just very frustrating that we had to sacrifice safety at E. Wilson.
But the fence is going in now, right? Like it's.
I mean, the fence is going in, yes. The fencing is
So,
going in.
so the reason.
It had to go in the upcoming fiscal year as compared to the end
because
of the
the
last
lead
fiscal
time-
year.
Because the lead
You didn't
time
get
was
that
not
in.
allowed anything.
That wasn't
There were a
what was
lot of other
discussed at that
projects that
building
we were
committee
looking
meeting.
at last year that because of lead time, we couldn't do it. So there were things that we were.
You have to
looking at.
close everything out by June 30th.
But that's
Rob's pretty strict
not
on
how it
it.
was discussed at the
So-
building meeting. But I'm glad to hear we're not doing that. As long as we're not cutting things at E. Wilson.
No.
So if we were to go to a revenue sharing thing, have we ever considered going to equitable revenue sharing between the schools so that we don't continue to run into this issue with E. Wilson? So I've been reviewing with this revenue sharing stuff, and a lot of the counties that do it, and there aren't that many that do it, and I can't say that I'm actually in favor of the idea to begin with, but a lot of the counties that do it, they have an equitable split on the earmarked funds for their school. So that way we're not having one school continually shortchanged on upgrades, maintenance, renovations, improvements, et cetera, et cetera. So would we consider doing something like
We can
that?
look at anything that the board wants to look at. I know that one thing for me is, as Buck puts together this plan and looks at what our needs are, and when those principals come in November and they say we need this, 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 and this, you know, yes, we prioritize those, and right now we're trying to get the things done at E. Wilson Morrison to make sure that we get them a facility that they can have PE in, and that's larger than just the 2 classrooms, and getting some upgrades there. Furniture at a lot of our schools, some of the furniture is still back in the 1950s.
Why don't we deal with the drainage issue with the wall that's probably at E. Wilson before we deal with furniture? But
So
the
one
point being is the more we save on this LFK renovation, the more money we should have to put into CIP for E. Wilson. That's where my sticking point is with LFK renovation. It started off as CARES Act for putting up walls and HVAC system so that we can, for the safety of the students for obvious reasons with that. But then we've got like the extra added in with like replacing the gym floor at LFK. Like I take serious issue with that. And I say that as somebody who teaches PE. I take serious issue with replacing a gym floor in a perfectly good gym at one school when we've got another school that doesn't have a gym at all. So I know we all want to act like $100,000 isn't a big deal, but that adds up.
No, I understand. And I'm not going to say that I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
So, you know, there are things that, you know, if there's any way that we can save, we need to save so that we can put more towards. That's why I said earlier that right now I don't want to touch that $600,000 that is left over from the Blue Ridge Tech, because I want to, you know, that just gave us that extra to go towards E. Wilson Morrison. So, you know, I agree with you in the principle of.
So I think we're all on the same page with that here. I'm hearing the same echo from the county in that they are concerned and prioritizing E. Wilson Morrison. And if we've got something we agree on. Let's just build upon that.
So I want to say a few things, please. Can I jump in, or are you finished?
Before I finish, there's one thing that I did want Mr. Ballantyne to talk about. So, in our last meeting, they were projecting us to that the county would need to give, what was it, 1.2 million for raises. And so I asked Mr. Ballantyne to look at that. And so what we did is we projected, and what I had him include, and this won't be in your packet, so this is Mr. Ballantyne folder only.
Well, I hope I brought it with me.
But I actually had him include had the ladies include those 13 and a half positions that we're holding right now, like the ELL, the counselors, that list. So I actually had him included in here to see where we were at, and so I'll let him kind of talk about.
Well, guess what? I didn't bring that list with, or bring that calculation with me. What it did show is
I can probably find it on my
the local share. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. 2.098 million is what we'll get additional from state. I don't have the exact number, but it was like 2.4. 2.5. It was, yeah, it was 2,536,000 to give the 5% raise to everyone we have on board now, plus the vacancies that we have. We will get 2,098,000 from the state in additional funding next year based on their budget. Now, the caveat is the state budget will change a little bit. Typically, unless the economy tanks, we may even get a little bit more from them in the second year. They'll come back and adjust some things. No given there, but it could go either way. And the number, the 2.5 million there, does not reflect what the staff turnover savings are. So I think with a pretty high confidence level, we could go from this year to next year, give the mandatory, or not the mandatory, but the incentivized 5% raise to all employees and not have to ask for any additional county money.
And that's the inclusive of the step. So that's not a step.
Yeah, that's a 5%, which would include the step, similar to what happened for our employees this year. Same thing we did this year. Yes. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then, cost of things and that, and then also the state revenue. If the economy continues to grow, then we probably will be in a better position. If it doesn't and goes the other way, then we may not be in as good a position. But that's just sort of how you have to live. That's how you adjust.
When do you guys meet again as a budget committee?
Sorry.
When do you meet again with the budget committee?
Next Thursday.
So we meet on Thursday. We're going to meet on Thursday again. And right now, I have to tell you, my priority is to continue to work together for us to be 100% funded. I worry about morale, what they have seen going back and forth over the last 6 months. We've been working on this diligently. We have met regularly. We've always been at our meetings. We've provided every bit of information. We come to the table and we're asked for more. We provide it. We are establishing what I feel is a good moving forward path and working relationship. But our focus right now has to be to get us to 100% funding. We are already 2 months into that fiscal year. We are building the plane and driving it, or building the plane and flying it at the same time. And that is not, conductive to our school morale. I heard numbers that, we had a lot of teachers that are, they do not believe that they are appreciated and want to come here. So I want to change that. I want to continue to work with our subcommittee. We've had some really good discussions, but it's, here we are. We still are not fully funded. We need to get to the point where we are fully funded. We have a plan. We'll have lots of good discussions about the MOU moving forward. It's not going to happen overnight. We need to look at those numbers, because our priority as our elected board is to make the decisions of the money that we are appropriated and how we use it to support our students and our teachers. So that is, I feel very passionate about that right now. And Ms. Lowe, I don't know if you want to add anything since you're on the budget committee as well.
I agree with that. I mean, I feel like we have been moving forward, and I appreciate the funding, the additional funding that we received last night. But I continue to agree. I mean, I think that we would like to see full funding. In the conversations we've had, it seems like it is still on the table, and it seemed like if we could figure out ways to pay for those projects that we have planned, that they would be willing to put that in our operating funds. But it hasn't happened yet, so it is really hard being this far into the fiscal year and still having so much uncertainty. But all we can do is keep on working on it, I think, and moving forward. We haven't heard no, we haven't heard that they're not supportive. It just hasn't happened yet. So.
And your meeting will be after our special meeting, so you'll know more information about LFK going into it. And then the 1.2 million you didn't really hit on, but that's covering basically those 13 new positions that are just not going to be able to be funded.
Yeah, so when you look,
for current employees.
yeah, and so when you look at that, I think those 13 and a half positions, that really only gets you at 1 million, just right at 1 million. It's $1,005,000, and so there's still 1.2.
So 200,000.
So we would still have to go back and look and see what we have to, take away from this budget at 1.2, because we still have planned. We want to have every student to have the opportunity to have art, all year long. That has been a discussion on the table for many, many years, I know. And those are the things that, the longer it just puts us in a really tough position. The longer we're here, and we're already, the school started, if those things are there, finding staff to fill those positions, it becomes challenging, I'm sure, mid-year. So I'm very hopeful. We've had good conversations, but this is where we're at.
We're just here to answer any questions from you guys. I just wanted to let everybody see kind of what we are, because there's been a lot thrown out there, and it can get confusing at times.
Well, and I appreciate you taking the time to walk everything through, because I agree, even for us that are looking at the numbers every day, it is confusing. It's but we're looking at it, and Rob, thank you for all those all the multiple sheets you've given us of everything. So we certainly appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for taking a positive approach, because the misinformation that's being spread and getting our teachers to feel like their raises were going to be cut, that doesn't help anything.
In reality, I want to be very honest here. In reality, they could have been. They absolutely could have been.
The raises were not going to be cut.
They could have been. If we would not have been funded, we would have had to take out 5.7 plus 6.9 million, and we wouldn't have had the money.
But
so that's not a lie. That's not a lie.
That the raises were not going to be cut.
To provide that list.
To provide a list of.
They did. They did.
Never once said that they intended to cut the teacher raises, and all
I'm not saying they did say that.
Chaos and damage the working relationship.
But they asked us for that. They asked us for that list of when you don't have $6 million, what gets cut. And that that was on the list. I mean, we're not lying about anything. We're not changing anything.
No, nobody's saying that you're lying about anything, but there was certainly some information put out on social media encouraging teachers to void their contracts and quit on the first day of school.
Well, you know what? I focus on facts, and the fact of the matter is that they appropriate the money. They are the elected board to appropriate the money for the county. And I love the due diligence that they do, because, I'm a town and county person. I don't want my taxes going up anymore. I think we can all agree on that. And I know they are doing their due diligence in that. We are the elected board to serve the school board. So when the dollar amount is appropriated, we have the discussions about where it goes. And when we don't get that large chunk of money, then we have to have those hard conversations about making, choices, which we've done multiple times, Right now, though, we are in a much better position than we were 2 days ago. We are very thankful for that. I think, I'll go back to what I said. We've got some positive conversations, and I think most importantly is we are paving a path for a process that I don't think has been in place in previous years, so that when we are at the table again in November, which is going to sneak up on us, we have a good process to move forward, and that is what's going to benefit our students and our county as a whole.
Thank you guys all for that, and thank you for clarifying all the numbers for us this evening. Thank you, Mr. Valentine, again for all your work with the numbers and reworking the numbers. We have one last thing on our agenda, and that's to go into closed session. Ms. Salins, if you could read us in.
This motion is made that this open public meeting of the Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matter in a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of employees of the school board, specifically an employee personnel issue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Grant, could you do roll call pause for a minute?
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Dr. Pence.
Aye.
Mr. Rinaldi.
Aye.
Mrs. Salins.
Aye.
Dr. Funk.
Aye.
All right, great, thanks for the closed session.
Stay here, or we